The descent started on night 5, but I didn't recognize it as descent. I thought I was investigating. I thought I was solving the problem. That I was actually doing was dissolving. Dale came in from his shift at 1800, and when he saw me at my desk, he smiled with teeth that were slightly too white. "Rough day, buddy?" he said. And the words were right, the tone was right, but the cadence was mine, the exact rhythm I use when I'm checking on someone who's had a bad call. "I'm fine," I said. "You always say that." He smiled, his laugh, the one I do when I'm deflecting. "Even when you're not. Even when you're sitting there thinking about how everything's falling apart and you can't tell anyone because they'll think you're crazy." I stared at him. "I never said that out loud." "Didn't you?" He tilted his head. The angle was perfect. The angle I use when I'm assessing someone's mental state. "Maybe you did, and you just don't remember. You've been having those blank spots, haven't you?" My headache pulsed behind my eyes, sharp spike of pressure. "What blank spots?" Dale pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, turned it towards me. Security footage. Black and white, timestamp 3:07, 2 nights ago. I was standing in the hallway outside the operations room. My eyes were closed, my lips were moving, forming words I couldn't hear through the silent footage. My hands were at my sides, fingers twitching in sequence. Counting. "You stood there for 4 minutes," Dale said softly. "Then you walked back to your desk and kept working like nothing happened. Morrison asked if you were okay. He said you'd just been checking the thermostat." "I don't remember that." "I know." He put the phone away. His smile was gentle, concerned, perfectly calibrated to my own expressions of empathy. "It's okay, Ben. We all have blank spots now. It's easier once you stop fighting it." Morrison appeared in the doorway, coffee cup in his hand, that same too-wide smile. "Everything okay in here?" "Ben's having a hard time," Dale said. "We're all worried about him." Morrison's voice was warm, fatherly, using the exact inflection I'd heard him use with rookie officers who were struggling. "Maybe you should take some time off before something happens." I stood up so fast my chair hit the wall. "I'm going on patrol." "At night?" Morrison's eyebrows raised. "That's not safe, Ben. You know the rules." "It's 8 o'clock. I have 7 hours before the rules matter." I grabbed my coat and I walked out. Neither of them tried to stop me. They just watched me leave with those patient, knowing smiles. Outside, the cold hit like a fist. -42. Kind of cold that makes your lungs ache, turns your breath to ice crystals before it leaves your mouth. I got in my truck and started driving with no destination in mind, just the need to move, to be away from those smiles. That's when I noticed the night clerk through the station window. Mary, 60-something, always hems while she filed paperwork. She was standing perfectly still at her desk, head tilted at that familiar angle, staring directly at me with pupils so dilated her eyes looked black. I drove. The headache had evolved beyond pain into something else. Pressure, density, like my skull was filling with frost, ice crystals forming in the spaces between thoughts. Sometimes when I blinked, I saw after images. A tall figure standing in my peripheral vision, a hand reaching for my shoulder, the shape of someone's face pressed against the passenger window, breath fogging the glass from the inside. I pulled over on an empty stretch of road and checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Sarah. 2 voicemails I couldn't bring myself to listen to. A text from Thomas. Need to talk. I stared at that message for a full minute. Then I opened my phone and scrolled back to the night of the rescue. The gap was still there, photos from 2:45 showing my gear laid out on the station floor, then nothing until 4:23 showing me filing paperwork with what looked like mud on my boots. No, not mud, frozen blood. I drove to Thomas's house. Sat in the driveway for 10 minutes, engine running, heat blasting, trying to steady my breathing. His truck was there. Lights on in the kitchen. Through the window I could see him sitting at the table, head in his hands. I knocked. He opened the door and looked at me with eyes that had forgotten how to sleep. "Show me a picture of your daughter," I said. He just stared. "Nika, your daughter, the one I saved. Show me a picture." Thomas reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone with shaking hand, and scrolled through his photos. He turned the screen toward me. A boy, maybe 6 years old. Dark hair, bright smile, holding up a fish almost as big as he was. "Tobias," Thomas said quietly. "My son. My only son." "No!" The word came out broken. "No, you have a daughter. Nika, 8 years old. She took the dog sled out to check the nets. I found her in a frost heave at 3:09, and I brought her back." "I know you did." His voice cracked. "I know you brought someone back, but Ben, I've never had a daughter. I've checked my birth certificates, my tax records, my wife's medical files. We only had Tobias, he's 6. But I remember thanking you for saving Nika. I remember bringing you salmon. I remember her face." He grabbed my arm, fingers digging in hard. "I remember things that never happened, and the more I try to hold on to those memories, the more they slip away and they get replaced by things they feel wrong. Wrong, but everyone else says they're right." "What do you mean?" "Bias's birthday. My wife and I celebrated it 2 weeks ago. He turned 6. But when I look at the photos, he's in clothes that are too small. And in the background, there's a shadow. Tall, thin, wearing something that looks like your SAR coat. And I can see your name patch, but the letters are backwards." The frost behind my eyes expanded. "What did I bring back?" I whispered. "I don't know." Thomas's eyes were wet. "But it's wearing your face now. 3 nights ago, Tobias woke up screaming, saying there was a man in his room who looked like Officer Harper, but his smile was wrong. I checked, I found nothing. When I turned on the lights, there were boot prints in the frost on his window. From the inside, Ben. Like someone had been standing in his room, breathing on the glass." I backed away from his door. My mind fractured. I'm sorry," I said. "Don't be sorry." His voice followed me to my truck. "Just fix it. Whatever you did, whatever deal you made, fix it. Fix it before it takes everyone." I drove back to the station. I parked. I couldn't make myself go inside. The building looked wrong. The windows were glowing, but the light was too steady. It was too perfect. There was no flicker. There was no shadow, just flat, even illumination that made my eyes hurt. Dale was visible through the operations room window. He was typing on his computer. That same mechanical precision, his posture too straight, his movements too measured. Every 30 seconds he stopped, he tilted his head, and he resumed typing like a metronome, like clockwork. I couldn't go in there, not yet. I drove to the library instead. Margaret was at her desk, even though it was nearly midnight. She looked up when I entered. Her smile was immediate. Wide and wrong. "Benjamin, working late." I need to see the archives again, old records, everything you have from before 1960. "Of course." She stood with that fluid grace that belongs to someone decades younger. "Right this way." She led me down the stairs. The air grew colder with each step, my breath fogging in the dim light. The basement smelled like old paper. And something else. Something organic and rotting. "Here we are." Margaret gestured to the shelves. "Take your time. I'll be upstairs if you need anything." She left me alone with the boxes. I started pulling files, incident reports from the 1950s, search and rescue logs, community newsletters, every document I'd looked at before, trying to trace Akna's presence through the decades, but the photos, they were different now. 1956 group photo, Auntie was back. She was standing in the second row this time, clearly visible, same gray hair, same smile. 1968 dedication ceremony, there she was, front and center, shaking hands with the mayor. The wartime civil defense meeting, she was at the podium speaking to the assembled crowd. She hadn't been erased. She'd been rewritten, made more visible, more present, like reality was retroactively adjusting to accommodate her existence. I kept digging, going further back. 1947, a photo of volunteers clearing snow from the old airstrip. Auntie in the background holding a shovel. 1932, a blurry shot of a town meeting, Auntie sitting in the third row. 1921, a formal portrait, the kind taken with old cameras that required long exposures. Everyone else slightly blurred from small movements, but Auntie was perfectly clear, standing at the edge of the frame with her hand on the shoulder of a small girl. That girl maybe 8 years old. I turned the photo over, written in faded ink, rescue volunteers with the Koczynski girl, found alive after 3 days. Miracle. That girl. The girl looked exactly like Nika. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the photograph. I kept going, pulling boxes I hadn't noticed before, files that seemed to appear as I searched, and in every decade, every generation, there was a photo. A young girl lost and found, and in every photo, somewhere in the frame, was Auntie. 1909, a child found in a snowdrift. 1887, a girl who wandered away during a storm. 1856, a daughter thought drowned beneath the ice. All of them the same age. All of them with the same dark eyes, the same serious expression. All of them alive because someone had found them. Someone had gone into the dark and brought them back, and in each case, within a month of the rescue, someone else had vanished. An adult, a volunteer, a hero. The ledger always bounced. I was about to close the last box when I found it. Not a photo, a book. Leather cover, walrus ivory toggle. Kind of binding that predated modern bookmaking. I opened it with trembling fingers and the pages crackled with age. The handwriting was Cyrillic mixed with Inupiaq symbols, scripts flowing together like water mixed with oil. But I could read the first entry, maybe because I needed to, maybe because it wanted me to. Akna, daughter of the storm, 1721, keeper of the balance. Let no debt go unpaid, let no name leave the ledger except in exchange for another. Her name was written in rust-brown ink. Blood ink. Every page that followed was filled with names, hundreds of them, thousands. Each one carefully inscribed, each one crossed out with a single decisive line, and next to each crossed name, another name, written in fresh ink. I flipped through decades, centuries. The handwriting never changed, the same careful script, the same shaky hand. At the very back, on the most recent page, I found my own name. Harper, Benjamin, SAR officer, debt assumed, 307, 6th night, balance due 7th night. Below my name, a blank line waited. I sat there in the cold basement holding the book, understanding finally what this was, not a record, a contract, a bill of sale. The physical manifestation of the deal Akna had made 3 centuries ago. The book was still open to my page when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Margaret descended slowly, each step deliberate. When she reached the bottom, she looked at the book in my hands. Her smile never wavered. "You found it," she said. Her voice layers now, multiple tones braided together. "That's good. It's better when they understand." "How long have you been one of them?" 37 years. She said it simply, like she was telling me her anniversary. "I was a school teacher. There was a little boy lost in a whiteout. I found him, brought him home. Everyone called me a hero." Her head tilted. 3 days later, I looked at a walker. I really looked, and then I understood. It's not so bad, Benjamin. You stop feeling cold. You stop feeling afraid. You just continue. That's not life. No, she agreed. But it's not death either. It's service. It's purpose. The ledger needs keepers. The balance needs maintaining. Akna can't do it alone anymore. She's so tired, Benjamin. 300 years is so long. She needs help. I stood clutching the book. Where is she? Where she always is. Where she's been waiting for you since you took the debt. Margaret gestured toward the stairs. At the station. At 307. She'll be at the dispatch desk with the fountain pen, and all you have to do is sign the line below your name. Write someone else's name there. Anyone. A tourist who underestimates the cold. A drunk who won't be missed. An elder who's ready to walk into the white. Just a name, Benjamin. And then you're free. And if I don't? Then at 307, the walkers come for you. And you become like us, like Dale, like Morrison, like me. Balanced. She smiled that patient, empty smile. Forever. I pushed past her and ran up the stairs. Behind me, I heard her call out, voice echoing in the basement space. "You can't run from a debt, Benjamin. It follows you. It always collects." I burst out into the street with a book under my arm. My truck was where I'd left it, engine still running, heat still blasting. I got in, and I checked the time. 2:23. 44 minutes. I drove back to the station with the book on the passenger seat. Its presence, a cold weight that seemed to press against my ribs. The streets were empty, no cars, no people, just the flat expanse of snow and the buildings standing like monuments to ordinary life. The station lights were on. Through the windows, I could see them. Dale at his desk, Morrison in the break room, the night clerk at her station, all of them moving with that same fluid, measured grace, all of them waiting. I parked and I sat there, engine idling, watching them. In the rearview mirror, I saw a movement, a figure, approaching from behind, tall and thin, silhouette cutting sharp against the aurora-lit sky. It walked with purpose, with recognition, boots leaving no prints in the snow. I looked down at the book, opened it to my page, stared at the blank line below my name. All I had to do was write. Choose someone, anyone. Transfer the debt. My pen was in my pocket. I pulled it out and I uncapped it. The figure was closer now. I could see it in the side mirror. It was wearing my SAR coat, my name patch visible, letters backwards, mirror flipped, its face a smudge, a photograph left in water too long, but I could see the outline of my features trying to form in that blank space. It was learning how to be me. I looked back at the blank line, then I closed the book. I got out of my truck. I walked back to the station with the book under my arm. The cold hit hard, but I barely felt it. The headache had crystallized into something beyond pain, a solid pressure that made my vision sharp and strange. The doors opened automatically. The heat inside felt too dry, too still. Dale looked up from his desk. Morrison appeared in the break room doorway. The night clerk stood from her chair. They all turned towards me in perfect synchronization, heads tilting at that familiar angle. "Benjamin," Morrison's warm voice. "We're so glad you came back. Are you ready?" I walked past them without responding, heading for the operations room. Auntie was waiting at the dispatch desk, just as Margaret had said that she would be. The ledger lay open before her. My page visible, the blank line, waiting. In her hand was a fountain pen, its barrel made from something that looked like carved bone, yellowed with age. She looked up as I entered, and for a moment I saw her as she truly was. Not the kindly elder everyone believed in, not the warm presence who'd worked dispatch for generations. I saw the hollowness. Centuries of borrowed time, the scar on her cheek that had never healed. Frost in her eyes that had replaced whatever humanity she'd once possessed. "Benjamin," her voice was soft, almost gentle. "You brought the book. Good boy. It's almost time. Are you ready to choose?" I set the book on the desk between us. Opened it to my page. "I want to understand something first," I said. "How did it start? How did you become this?" She was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the aurora flickered, casting green light through the windows. "They called me a witch," she said finally. 1721. I was a healer. I knew plants. I knew which roots stopped fever, which moss slowed bleeding. That was enough to make them afraid. When the sickness came that winter and I couldn't stop it, they decided that I was the cause. She touched her cheek, tracing the old scar. They cut me, marked me, dragged me onto the ice, and they left me to freeze. But she didn't freeze. No. Her eyes were distant, seeing 300 years into the past. Oh, I was angry. So angry. I wanted to live. I wanted them to suffer, so I cut my own fingers, all 10 of them, and I fed them to the dark, and the dark answered. It said, "You want to live? Then keep the books. Tundra takes people, always has. Someone has to maintain the balance. Someone has to make sure the debts are paid. Do this, and you will never die." So you became a monster. I became a keeper. Her voice hardened. For 300 years, I've maintained the balance. Every life saved means a life owed. The ledger must be full. The dark demands it. And yes, I've made the choices. I've written the names. I've watched them go into the white. She leaned forward. But I've also saved thousands, Benjamin. Thousands of children who lived because I made sure someone else paid their debt. That has to count for something. It doesn't. My voice was steady. You became what hurt you. You've done to others exactly what those villagers did to you for 300 years. Their face twisted. You don't understand. You can't understand. The dark doesn't forgive debts. It doesn't forget. If I stop, if the ledger goes unfilled, it takes everything, everyone. The balance collapses. Then let it collapse. She laughed, sharp and bitter. You sacrifice this entire town, everyone you've ever met, for what? Principle. No. I picked up the book. He held it between us. I'd sacrifice the system, the one that you've been feeding for 3 centuries, the one that only exists because you kept agreeing to it. I opened the book to the first page, to her name written in blood ink, never crossed out. The ledger says the debt can be paid by the hand that wrote it, I said. You wrote your name first. You made the deal. You've been paying with other people's lives for 300 years, but the original debt, that was yours, Akna. It's always been yours. She went very still. Outside, the aurora intensified, sheets of green and violet swirling overhead. The station lights flickered, the radio hissed static. What are you saying? Her voice had gone flat. I'm saying we end it. Both of us. Your name goes back into the ledger as the debt. My name stays as the keeper. We close the book together. No more transfers. No more children saved in adult sacrifice. Just the 2 names that started this. Yours and mine. You die. I'm already dying. I can feel it, the frost in my head, the blank spots, the thing wearing my face. At 3:07, I either become a monster like you, or I get taken by the walkers. Those are the only options left. I placed my hand on the book, palm flat against her name. Unless we change the rules, the dark won't allow it. Then let's find out. I reached across the desk and took the fountain pen from her hand. She didn't resist. For the first time in 300 years, I saw uncertainty in her eyes. I capped the pen. I placed the tip against the page right over her name. What are you doing? Finishing your story. The way it should have ended in 1721. With a choice, with agency, with an ending that's yours. And not theirs. I began to write. Not a new name below mine, but a line through hers, crossing out, Akna, daughter of the storm, 1721. She sucked in a sharp breath, the lights flickering violently, the radios shrieked, and she grabbed my hand. Her fingers, cold and brittle, pressed my palm down against the page alongside hers. If you're going to finish my story, then do it right. Tell them I was human once. Tell them I was afraid. Tell them I wanted to be found, not forgiven. Outside, the walkers appeared. Dozens of them, hundreds, filling the space around the station, tall, impossibly thin, dark silhouettes against the aurora light. They pressed against the windows, faces forming in that smudged blankness. All the people who'd looked, all the debts that had never truly cleared. They kept writing, the ink flowing across the page, not a crossing out anymore, a transformation. I wrote her story in the margins, around her name, every year, every choice, every moment of fear and rage and loneliness. I see you, I whispered. I remember you. You were Akna, you were human, you were hurt, and you survived the only way that you knew how. A sound like breaking glass filled the station. The book began to glow, pale light seeping between the pages. The names written there, all those centuries of transfers and debts and balances, began to lift off the paper, ink swirling into the air like smoke, like snow, like all the stories that had never been allowed to end. The radio clicked. "307. The walkers moved as one. Not toward me, toward her. They flowed through the walls like smoke, like memory converging on the dispatch desk. Shadow hands reaching out, dozens of them, hundreds. All the people she'd named over 3 centuries, all the debts that had been transferred and never truly paid. She didn't scream, she didn't fight. She just looked at me with eyes that had finally remembered how to be afraid, how to be relieved. Thank you for remembering me as human." And then the walkers took her. Not violently, gently, like they were helping an elder to her feet, guiding her towards a door that had been waiting 300 years to open. The light from the book intensified, becoming painful, white, and absolute. I felt the frost on my head crack, shatter, the pressure releasing all at once, leaving behind a clarity so sharp that it hurt. The station went completely black. I don't know how long I sat there in that darkness. Could have been seconds. Could have been hours. Time felt negotiable, plastic, like it was resetting itself to account for something that had been bent wrong for too long. When the lights came back on, the book was blank. Every page, every name. 300 years of entries gone, just empty vellum, yellow with age, waiting to be filled with something new, something that didn't require a sacrifice. The fountain pen lay on the desk, snapped cleanly in half. I picked up the pieces and put them in my pocket. And then I heard snoring. Dale was asleep at his desk, head pillowed on his arms, breathing deep and even. Real sleep, human sleep. I walked over and shook his shoulder gently. He startled awake, looking around in confusion. "Ben? What time is it? Why am I here?" "Hold it on lighter," I said. "Come on, let's get some coffee." In the break room, Morrison was slumped in a chair, coffee cup still in his hand, completely out. The night clerk was gone, her coat missing from the rack. Probably went home hours ago and nobody noticed. Everything felt normal, mundane, real in a way it hadn't been for 7 days. I checked the security footage, scrubbed back to 3:07. Timestamp showed my usual patrol routine, no standing in hallways, no whispering, no blank spots, just me. Filling out paperwork, looking tired, but human. The blank spots were gone. The false memories were gone. The thing wearing my face was gone. I drove home as the sun rose, painting the tundra in shades of pink and gold. The roads were empty. The town was waking up slowly, smoke rising from chimneys, people starting their ordinary days. My house looked the same as always. Sarah's car in the driveway, kitchen light on. I sat in the truck for a long moment, afraid of what I'd find inside. Then I walked in. Sarah was making breakfast. The kids were at the table arguing over the last waffle. They all looked up when I entered, and Sarah's expression was wary. Hurt, but real. Genuinely hers. "You came back," she said quietly. "I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate. "I'm so sorry. I can't explain where I've been, what I've been doing, but it's over." "Is it?" She looked at me carefully. "Are you back? Really back?" I crossed the kitchen and pulled her into a hug. She was warm and solid, And herself. I'm back, I said. I promise. My daughter tugged on my sleeve. Daddy, you smell like smoke. I'll take a shower, I said, and we'll have breakfast, all of us, together. It took weeks for things to fully normalize. Thomas brought me salmon again, thanking me for finding his daughter Nika when she'd gotten lost checking the nets. She was 9 now, he said, getting too brave for her own good. The details matched my memories. The timeline made sense. I never asked him if he remembered having a son named Tobias. Some questions are better left alone. The station ran its usual operations: search and rescue, welfare checks, the occasional tourist who underestimated the cold, but the success rate improved. Fewer people went missing, fewer debts needed balancing. Auntie's cabin sat empty. According to the Burroughs record, it had been abandoned since 1978, which now matched what the archive showed. Her name appeared in some historical records, but only where it made sense. A volunteer, a community leader, someone who'd helped when help was needed, and then moved on. The ledger stayed blank. I kept it locked in my desk drawer at the station, checking it occasionally to make sure no new names appeared. It remained empty. Clean. Waiting. The radios still clicked at 3:07. Every single night, that sharp, metallic snap across all 5 channels. I checked the logs. It went back for as far as our records existed. Not 11 years, not 100, just a feature of the equipment, probably. Atmospheric pressure, electromagnetic phenomenon. The aurora does strange things to signals. That's what I told myself. But sometimes on clear nights when I'm on patrol, I see a figure in the distance. Tall, thin, and dark against the snow. It doesn't move towards me, it doesn't threaten, it just stands there at the edge of visibility, at the place where the tundra meets the sky. And once, just once, I thought I saw it raise one hand. It could have been a wave, it could have been a farewell. It could have been the wind playing tricks with shadows and light. I didn't look directly at it, I didn't acknowledge it, didn't call out. I just kept driving. The ledger stays blank. Debt's paid, but the tundra still keeps its secrets, and I've become one of them. Every night at 3:07 when the radios click, I stop what I'm doing and I listen, just to make sure the silence that follows is truly empty. So far it has been. But I keep checking. I'll always keep checking, because that's what keepers do. We watch. We listen. We remember. And we make sure the dark stays empty of names. Hey there kids, it's me, Mr. Creepypasta, and we're currently entering fall, which means Halloween is right around the corner. I just want to say thank you guys for watching tonight's video, listening to tonight's episode of the podcast, and to start expecting more audios as we go closer and closer to the spookiest day of the year. Once October starts, you know what that means. I'll be having out a video every single day until Halloween itself, and I expect to see you there. I mean it. I expect to see you there for every video, for every podcast episode, and I expect to see you like, comment, and subscribe, and all that jazz bell, what do you do on podcasts? Follow on Spotify? Yeah, that, for the month of October, and especially so you don't miss the 13-day countdown. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody on this list of Patreons. Some of these amazing folks are Diana Kraus, Acid System, Blake Rattler, Brandon Mendoza, Britta Crow, Kaltuna, Chicago Hitman, Corey Kenshin, Crusader Chocobo, Dakota Best, Daniel Polson, Dante Kincaid, Enchanted Buns, Estabine, Hades Nephew, Himbo Jerry, Our Minute Seconds Time, Inga
Ingegerd Sahlstrom, Jay Kearns, Jadis Pet, McMog, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Psychomel, Plant Piz, Red Shadow Cat, Remember the Sun, Salty Surprise, Samara Lynn, Seclude, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Sky Harbor, Smiley the Psychotic, Sully Man, Tully Sue, Team Leo 76, The Demented Voice in Your Head, The Chavez Brothers, The Ginger Bros, Tommy Walters, Viceroy Scorn, William Wellington, Your Bro Keegan, Zabub, and Shadow Gardens. A huge thank you to you guys, everybody who shows up in the description down below, and as always, folks, sweet dreams.
The thing about working search and rescue above the Arctic Circle is that you get comfortable with the silence. With the absence of sound, I mean, there's always wind, there's always the groan of the ice settling. There's always your own breath fogging into the heat lamp beam. I'm in the silence of empty space, miles of it. Kind of makes you understand why the Inupiat, 47 words, different types of darkness. My 4th year at the SAR station. Tonight's a paperwork shift, which means I'm alone in the operations room with 3 thermoses of coffee and a stack of incident reports that need signatures. Heater clicks on every 12 minutes. Radio hisses their white noise lullaby. Outside it's a nice, balmy negative 34 degrees Fahrenheit, and the tundra stretches flat and featureless to the horizon like a frozen ocean. Most people who go missing out here fall into 3 categories. Tourists, who underestimate the cold. Locals, who overestimate their sobriety. And elders, who simply walk into the white and they don't come back. And that last category we don't talk about much. It's cultural. It's complicated. It's not my story to tell. What I can tell you is this. The radios always click at 3:07. It's not a transmission. It's not interference. It's a single sharp click across all channels simultaneously. Atmospheric pressure. That's what I told myself for the first 2 years. Electromagnetic phenomena. The aurora, it does strange things to signals up here. And then, last night, I checked the station log going back 11 years. Every night. 3:07 exactly. Every single night for over 4,000 consecutive days. Man, that's not atmospheric, that's accounting. And last night, after the click, I heard something else. It sound like paper shuffling, like someone flipping through a ledger, running their fingers down a column of names. Last night, I heard them stop on mine. Call came in at 2:47. I was still staring at the logbook, pen frozen in my hand, when the emergency line lit up. A voice I'd recognized, Thomas Ackpick, a whaling captain from Browerville, speaking fast in a mix of English and Inupiat. His daughter, 8 years old, Nika, she had taken the dog sled out and checked the nets despite being told to wait until morning. The dog came back. Alone. An hour ago. Still in harnesses. Trailing cut traces. I was geared up on my snowmobile within 6 minutes. Before I cleared the gate, Auntie intercepted me. That's what everyone calls her, Auntie. She's not my aunt. Not anyone's aunt, specifically, but she's everyone's auntie in the way that matters. 70-something working SAR before there was a formal SAR. Knows the ice like she knows her own kitchen. She does dispatch now mostly, watches over the younger officers, the intensity of someone who's already buried too many of us. She stood in front of my snowmobile with one hand raised. "You know the rules, Benjamin." I did. Everyone who works out here learns them in the first week. Usually delivered as graveyard shift folklore by veterans with frostbite scars and 1,000-yard stares. Rule 1, don't go out between 3 and 3:14 a.m. unless it is literally life or death. Rule 2, if you see figures in the distance that don't move like animals or people, just don't acknowledge them. Don't look at them directly. Don't call out. They're walkers. They're always there. You just can't usually see them. I nodded. It's 2:49. I'll have her back before 3. Auntie's expression didn't change. She reached into her parka and pulled out a small pouch. Seal leather, stitched with sinew, the kind elders keep their most important things in. You know the first 2 rules, she said. Here's the one they don't tell you until you need it. She pressed the pouch into my gloved hand. Inside was something hard and angular, like a piece of carved bone. If you see yourself ahead of you on the trail, she said. Voice dropped to something barely audible over my idling engine. Do not catch up. Do not call to it. Do not try to overtake it. That one's already paid. The cold suddenly felt colder. Paid to who? She stepped back from the snowmobile. Thunder keeps looks, Benjamin. The walkers keep the ledger. Find the girl, bring her home. But remember, debts don't disappear. Only transfer. I didn't fully understand. I didn't have time to ask. I opened the throttle and drove into the dark. I found Nika at 3:09. By then, I'd already violated Rule 1. A search grid had taken longer than expected. Visibility was maybe 15 feet in the ground blizzard, and I'd had to dismount 3 times to check tracks. When I finally spotted the shape in my headlamp, small and dark against the snow, I felt a surge of relief so intense it was almost painful. She was curled inside a frost heave, perfect square of uplifted ice, about 4 feet on each side, edges geometrically shaped in a way that natural ice never forms. She wasn't shivering, she wasn't crying, she was just sitting there with her knees drawn up, head down, like she was waiting for a bus. Nika, I called out, killing the engine and running towards her. Nika, honey, it's Bed from SAR. Your dad sent me. Are you hurt? She didn't respond. I knelt beside her, pulling off my gloves to check her face for frostbite. Her skin was cold, but not frozen. Pupils reactive, breathing steady. She looked up at me with an expression I'd never quite been able to describe. Not fear, not relief. Something closer to resignation. They said you'd come, she whispered. Who said? And that's when I made the mistake. I turned my headlamp to check behind her to see if there was someone else, maybe an older sister or a lost hiker who'd been sheltering with her. The beam swept across the figure standing directly behind her. Tall, maybe 8 feet. Impossibly thin, black against the sky, but somehow darker, like it was absorbing the light rather than reflecting it. No face, no features, just a silhouette that held itself in perfect stillness. Except for its right arm. Its right arm was slightly outstretched, angled down, exactly mirroring my own posture as I held the flashlight. I froze. The walker remained motionless for 3 seconds. 4. 5. Then it tilted its head. Not like an animal cocks its ear to listen, like someone examining an interesting specimen. The gesture was perfectly calibrated, measured, almost curious. It was the exact head tilt I do when I'm assessing an injured hiker's mobility. It was my gesture. I heard my own voice in my head screaming the rules. Don't acknowledge them. Don't look directly at them. It was too late. I was staring right into the void where its face should be. The walker held my gaze for another impossible moment. Then it simply wasn't there. No fade, no movement. Between one heartbeat and the next, the space between Nico was empty. I grabbed the girl, I pulled her onto my back, and I ran for the snowmobile. I don't remember the ride back. I remember Nika's small arms around my neck. I remember my speedometer pinned at 47 miles per hour across terrain. I normally take it 15. I remember the station lights appearing in the distance like a miracle. I remember checking my watch as we crossed the gate. It was 3:13. Nika was fine. Mild exposure, no frostbite, no injuries. Dehydrated, but alert. Clinic kept her for observation. She was released to her parents that morning with a clean bill of health. I was a hero. Thomas Ackpick shook my hand so hard I thought he'd dislocate my shoulder. Station chief wrote me up for a commendation. Someone brought donuts. Auntie pulled me into the supply room and closed the door. You looked at it. It wasn't a question. I nodded. She closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, they were wet. You saved the girl, she said quietly. That's good. That's what you should have done, but you need to understand what happens now. She sat down heavily on a crate of emergency flares. The walkers, they're not ghosts, they're not demons, they're auditors. Tundra takes people, Benjamin, that's what it does. Has for hundreds of years, but there are rules, balance. When someone goes missing, their name goes on the ledger. The walkers come to collect. Collect what? The debt. The space they took up, the warmth they borrowed from the world. My grandmother tried to explain it once. Words don't translate right. She rubbed her face. Point is, Nika's name was on that ledger. You found her alive, you brought her back. So the debt is closed, that's good. No. Her voice was flat. The debt doesn't disappear. You looked directly at a walker. You acknowledged it. By doing that, you accepted the transfer. Someone still has to pay. The ledger needs a name. My stomach dropped. And now it's yours. She stood up, pulled me to my feet, looked me hard in the eyes. You have 7 shifts. When the clock hits 3:07, 7 nights from now, the walkers will come for you unless you balance the ledger another way. What way? The missing person call will come in. You find them alive, and then you transfer the debt. Case closes clean, your slate's wiped, you walk away a free man. A cold void opened in my stomach. That can't be true. It is. Your name leaves the book, another one takes it. The horror of it locked my jaw when I could finally speak. The words were a whisper. You're telling me I have to condemn an innocent? Her expression didn't change. I'm telling you the rules. What you do of them's between you and the ice. She left me in the supply room with my thoughts and the distant hum of the refrigerator unit. 7 shifts. 6 days. By the end of the week, I either save a life or I sacrifice one. And the worst part? I was already thinking about the math. Next night I drew solo patrol. Routine sweep of the lake road, checking the ice fishing shelters, making sure no one's passed out drunk in their truck. Quiet shift. Empty tundra. The aurora was out, painting the sky in sheets of green, violet. At 3:07, the radio clicked, and the ice beneath my snowmobile vanished. Not broke through, just vanished. Perfect square, 8 feet on each side, open directly underneath me. I killed the engine, threw myself sideways, rolling onto the solid ice as the machine teetered on the edge. The hole wasn't filled with water, it was filled with nothing. Elevator shaft of absolute black dropping into a depth I couldn't measure. The aurora light hit the edge and just stopped. Then something climbed out. The walker rose from the shaft like smoke taking shape, but this time it wasn't a featureless silhouette. It was wearing my SAR coat, the same model, same color, same wear pattern on the left elbow where I lean on the truck door. My name patch was stitched on the breast, Harper B. The letters were backward, they were mirror flipped. It stood on the ice and shifted its weight on one hip, a tired stance I fell into at the end of long shifts. It opened its mouth. The first sound was static, like a radio stuck between channels, a dry, crackling exhalation that might have been an attempt at breath. It stopped. Tilted its head, my head. That same analytical gesture, and tried again. The second sound was clearer, a rasp that almost had syllables, almost had tone. It was trying to learn my voice. I pulled my flare gun with shaking hands and fired directly into its chest. The flare entered the dark coat and kept going. No impact, no light, no sound, like throwing a stone into a bottomless well. The bright red phosphorus just disappeared into that infinite black. The walker looked down at the entry point, then back at me. It tilted its head again. This time I recognized the gesture from the inside. That's what I look like when I'm sizing someone up, when I'm deciding if a hiker can make it another mile or if a victim's story adds up, or if someone's dangerous. It was learning how I think. And then I stepped backwards into the shaft. The square of missing ice sealed over in an instant, smooth, perfect, like it had never been broken. And I sat there for 5 minutes before I could move. I owed them a debt.
Hey there kids, it's me, Mr. Creepypasta. I just want to say thank you guys for watching tonight's video, listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody on this list of Patreons. If you'd like to join this list of names that I frequently mispronounce, you can check the description in the link down below, which I really appreciate because this helps me, 1, keep the lights on, and 2, helps me pay authors for the stories that you hear on this channel. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody on this list of Patreons. Some of these amazing folks are Diana Kraus, Acid System, Blake Rattler, Brandon Mendoza, Greta Crow, Paltuna, Chicago Hitman, Corey Kenshin, Crusader Chocobo, Dakota Best, Daniel Polson, Dante Kincaid, Enchanted Buns, Estebean, Hades Nephew, Himbo Jerry, Our Minute Seconds Time, Ingegerd Solstrom, Jay Kearns, Jadis Pet, McMog, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Psychomel, Plant Piz, Red Shadow Cat, Remember the Sun, Salty Surprise, Samara Lynn, Seclude, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Sky Harbor, Smiley the Psychotic, Sully Man, Tolly Sue, Team Leo 76, The Demented Voice in Your Head, The Chavez Brothers, The Ginger Bros, Tommy Walters, Viceroy Scorn, William Wellington, Your Bro Keegan, Zabub, and Shadow Gardens. A huge thank you to you guys, everybody who shows up in the description down below, and honestly, anybody who can pledge even just like $1 a month. You guys are absolutely amazing. I cannot continue doing this channel without you, and your support means the world to me. And that goes to everybody, not just on Patreon, but honestly just you guys out there who just subscribe, those guys out there who are just listening or putting on the nonstop radio live stream while it's running in their sleep. I appreciate you guys greatly, especially during this kind of rough time for me. Having you guys around, and I mean this wholeheartedly, it is incredible. So, hey, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being a part of this. And as always, folks, sweet dreams.
I keep going back and forth on whether to post this. Part of me thinks writing it out will help me process it, and part of me thinks I sound like a lunatic, but whatever. Here goes. I do cleanouts for a living. Foreclosures, mostly. Some abandoned rentals, couple of hoarder situations a year. Basically, once a bank or a landlord takes a property back and they call guys like me to go in and we just get everything out so they could sell it or they could rent it again. It's not glamorous work. I mean, most days it's just garbage bags and trying not to gag. See a lot of sad stuff, family photos, people left behind, kid toys. One time a dog crate with the door still zipped shut. I don't want to talk about that one. Point is, I've been in a lot of empty houses. Now, I've never had anything happen that I couldn't explain. That is, until 3 weeks ago. This place was a foreclosure. Been empty at least a year, probably more. Had that wet wood smell that houses get when nobody runs the heat for a while. There's no power. Windows were grimy. Barely see through them. It's standard stuff, honestly. I've seen way worse. I was working the upstairs bedrooms, tiny closet in the back bedroom, barely big enough for a rod and some hangers. There were a few coats still hanging, and behind them on the floor, there was this metal lockbox. The kind you keep documents in. The fireproof ones. The ones from Walmart, whatever. This is the part where I have to be honest about something, because people keep asking me, well, why didn't you just leave? Answer is because at this point, nothing weird happened yet. It was a box in a closet. I open boxes, containers in these houses literally every day because sometimes there's stuff worth salvaging. And sometimes there's stuff the bank needs to know about. The box wasn't locked. It wasn't even latched all the way. Inside one of those old clunky Polaroid cameras. Pack of film. Stack of photos face down. They look blank on the back, just white. Picked them up, flipped through them. One slid off the stack and landed on my forearm, and my sleeve was pushed up past my glove. Except it didn't land, it stuck, flat against my skin, stuck like a sticker or like wet paper, except it wasn't wet. And immediately cold, not cool, cold, like I'd pressed an ice cube onto my arm. I pulled it off quick. It made that sound, when you peel tape off skin, that ripping, tacky sound. And it took a second to come free. There was this white rectangle on my arm where it had been. I don't mean it was pale. I mean, it was white, like the color had been sucked out of my skin. Like if you took a photo and erased one square of it down to nothing. I was still looking at that, trying to figure out what the hell, when I noticed the photo in my other hand was changing. It was developing. Whatever the word is, when a Polaroid goes from blank to showing an image, except what it was showing was skin. It was showing my skin. I could see the freckle that I have near my elbow. It was my arm. And right in the middle of the image was this dark square shape. I looked at my arm. I looked at the photo. It was the same spot. Then my arm started hurting. Not like a cut or a sting, more like, okay, when you press your thumb really hard into a muscle and you hold it, that ache, but in a spot where there was no reason for it to hurt. The white rectangle on my skin started going purple while I watched, not spreading out like a bruise normally does. It's like filling in. The color was filling in from the edges towards the center, staying perfectly inside the rectangle shape, like something was coloring it in from underneath. I put the photo down on the floor and pain didn't stop. The photo finished developing and it showed my arm with the bruise. The same shape, same size, same location, like it had taken a picture of something that hadn't happened yet, and then it made it happen. I left. Okay, I want to say that I was calm about it, but honestly, I walked out fast. Didn't run, but I definitely wasn't casual about it. So the next morning, the bruise looks like it's been there for days, right? Dark in the middle, tender when I pressed on it. Perfectly rectangular, which I shouldn't have to tell you is not how bruises work. In the center of it, still lighter than the rest, almost pale. Also, and this is going to sound weird, but I swear, my hair stopped growing inside that rectangle. Like that patch of skin, like it wasn't mine anymore. Like it had been replaced with something that looked like skin, but wasn't exactly. I should have left it alone. I know that. You know that. Everyone reading this knows that. But I went back to the house, told myself I needed to finish the job because I do. They don't pay me if I don't finish, and I'm not about to lose a contract because I got freaked out by a piece of film. The box is still there. Everything was where I left it, except the top photo on the stack wasn't blank anymore. It developed on its own overnight, sitting in a dark closet in an empty house with nobody there. The image was the closet floor, the box, and a hand reaching for it. My hand, from earlier. But the angle was wrong. It was taken from inside the closet, from up high, like from the shelf above the rod, looking down at me opening the box. Nothing was on that shelf. I checked when I first found the box. There was nothing up there. I picked the photo up. I had my work gloves on this time because I'm dumb, but I'm not that dumb. And it twitched. I need you to understand what I mean. I don't mean that it moved because my hand was shaking. I mean the photo itself spasmed like a muscle, like something alive. One quick twitch, and then still again. The image started getting darker while I held it. The shadows in the closet in the picture were getting deeper. The inside of the box going black, way blacker than it should have been. And then something leaned forward out of that darkness in the photo. It was not a face. That's what everyone asks me. Was it a face? No, it was more like a face-shaped dark spot, like if darkness had layers and something pushed through from behind. My bruise lit up, felt like someone put a cigarette out on my arm. I dropped the photo, I yanked my glove off because my palm was burning now too. Red rectangle in the center of my palm. Same size as the photo edge, right where my fingers gripped it through the glove. So obviously, I took the whole box home. Yeah, I know. I don't have a good explanation for why I did that, except that I think I was already past the point of making smart decisions. I think when something impossible happens to you, your brain just kind of, it stops running the, is this a good idea program? It starts running the, I need to understand this program, and you do stupid things. Kitchen table, I dump everything out. Camera, film, stack of photos. I'm just sitting there staring at it like it's going to explain itself. So the camera clicks. My hands were on my lap. I wasn't touching it. It clicked by itself. The mechanical sound of a Polaroid taking a picture, and then the motor noise, then a photo slid out of the front. Slid across the table, stopped right in front of me. I don't mean it traveled because the table was tilted. My table isn't tilted. It slid across a flat surface and it stopped in front of me like someone pushed it. I didn't pick it up. I just sat there and I watched it develop. It was me, sitting at my kitchen table from across the room, like from the doorway to the living room. In the picture, my left hand was up. There was a black square on my palm. Not the red mark that was actually there. It was black, like a hole. My real hand started burning deep, not surface level, like the pain was coming from inside my hand, from the bones or the tendons or whatever is in there. I ran to the sink. I held it under the cold water. It didn't help at all. I watched the skin on my palm go white, and then red, and then this dark angry color, perfect square edges like it was printed on me. The camera was pointed at me from the table. The lens was facing me. I had dumped it out randomly, and somehow it landed pointed right at my chair, or it moved. I don't know. I grabbed oven mitts, shoved the camera in a metal trash can, and dumped all the film and photos in after it. And I put the lid on top, and I wrapped the whole thing in packing tape, took it to the garage. Felt like I was disposing of a body or something. Went to urgent care for my hand. The nurses wrapped it up, asked what I touched. I said I touched an old camera. She gave me this look like she wanted to ask for more, but didn't. They gave me burn cream and they sent me home. And that night I woke up because I heard it. That sound a Polaroid makes. The click. And then the whirring right next to my head. Camera was on my nightstand. A fresh photo sitting right next to it. I left it in the garage. I taped the lid. I know I did. The next photo showed my hand. Bandaged up, except in the photo, the bandages were soaked through. They were dark, saturated. My actual hand started itching under the bandage, then stinging, then this pulling feeling like something under my skin was being tugged sideways. I ripped the bandage off and the burn had changed. The skin inside the rectangle was smooth, not scarred smooth, but like new. Shiny, like a different type of skin had been installed there. And in the dead center was a gray mark. It looked like a doorway, a tiny rectangular doorway shape in the middle of my palm. Camera clicked again. Another photo came out, then another one, then another one. I didn't think. I grabbed it with the kitchen tongs, ran to the bathroom, threw it in the tub, dumped bleach, tile cleaner, drain opener, and everything under the sink on top of it. Didn't even think about the fumes. I mean, I probably should have. The camera sank to the bottom of the tub. It sank wrong. It sank too fast, way too heavy for what it was. Then it started whirring loud. Not the normal sound it makes, angrier, faster, like it was trying to take photos rapid fire from underwater. My palm felt like something was pushing out from inside, pushing against my skin from underneath, trying to get through. I yelled. I'll admit that. I'm not going to pretend I was tough about it. I yelled. I almost passed out. I had to sit down on the bathroom floor. The skin inside the square in my palm cracked along the edges, clean, straight cracks, and underneath the cracked skin was raw, pink new skin, like something had been pressing into it from the inside, molding it. Then the camera stopped. Everything stopped. The whirring, the pressure in my hand, all of it. Just done. I left everything in the tub for 3 days. I didn't go near the bathroom. I used the kitchen sink to brush my teeth. I don't care if that's gross. And when I finally went in there and fished stuff out, the photos were ruined. They were warped, swollen, fused together. The camera looked partially melted, plastic all warped, discolored. And I thought, okay, it's over. Whatever that was, it's done. And I picked it up. Top photo from the stack. And on the back of it, pressed into the surface like someone wrote it with a fingernail with the words, "Keep still while it develops." That night, my phone wouldn't unlock. Face ID wouldn't work. I tried the passcode, tried fingerprint. I looked at my fingers. The ridges were gone. My fingerprints, they were smooth. Both hands, all 10 fingers. Smooth like paper, like photo paper. It's been a few weeks now. Nothing else has happened. The rectangle scar on my palm is still there. Skin inside still feels different, tighter, thinner. Gets cold sometimes randomly, like really cold. Same cold I felt when that first photo stuck to my arm. My fingerprints still haven't come back. I had to set up a new passcode for everything. Couldn't even log into my banking app for 3 days. Try explaining to your bank that you need a password reset because a haunted camera stole your fingerprints. You can't. You just say you forgot it. I don't know what was in that camera. I don't know what it was trying to do to me. I don't know if that gray doorway shape on my palm is what I think it is. But sometimes at night my hand gets cold in that spot. It feels like something on the other side's pressing back, waiting for another picture. So yeah, don't touch old Polaroids you find in an empty house, because whatever's on the other side of that film doesn't just take pictures. It takes prints.
Hey there kids, it's me, Mr. Creepypasta, and before we say goodnight, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching tonight's video, or for listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. I also want to say if you guys like the stories you're hearing now, please check out the Creepypasta Collection Volume 1 and Volume 2. They're available now on Amazon, they're available at Barnes & Noble, they're available wherever you like to get books. They're some of the best authors I've worked with over the years, some of my absolute favorite authors, and some of my friends. So I'd appreciate it if you guys check those things out. There's also an audiobook that I wasn't involved with. I don't know why Simon & Schuster did that, but they did. So you can check that out too, if you'd like listening to books, but you just don't want to hear me. As always, I want to give a very big thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon, patreon.com/MrCreepypasta. People such as Diana Kraus, Asset System, Benjamin 2003, Blake Rattler, Bottle Coolant, Brandon Mendoza, Caltuna, Corey X Kenshin, Dakota Best, Daniel Polson, Dante Kincaid, Enchanted Buns, Eric Anthony Caruso, Estebean, 15 Squirrels in a Trench Coat, Galaxy Gremlin, Hayes Nephew, Himbo Jerry, Our Minute Second Time, Jay Kearns, Jedis Pet, Lou Cipher, Nick MC, Plant Piss, Red Shadow Cat, Remember the Sun, Salty Surprise, Samara Lynn, Scary Stories Fuel Me 32, Seclude, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Sky Harbor, Smiley the Psychotic, Sully Man, Polly Sue, Team Leo 76, The Chavez Brothers, The Ginger Bros, Tommy Walters, Viceroy Scorn, William Wellington, X Reaper 69, XX Lucky Cat XX, Zibulb, Shadow Gardens, Peaceful Buddha. Thank you all so much for being here. And as always, sweet dreams.
Bailey seemed like the perfect girl, a real angel sent from above. I met Bailey at the farmer's market. She was selling handmade soaps and dancing around in a dress that looked like it might have started life as a pair of curtains. I was selling eggs and vegetables, something I did pretty regularly on the weekends, and she took to me right away. Next week, when I came back, she had set up her stall right next to mine, and I guess we really hit it off. After that, we began dating. Sort of. Bailey never used labels. She said they were restraining. She preferred to call us partners, and I have to say that she really broadened my horizons. I was used to my dates being at the local steakhouse or at the creek while I fished, but Bailey was into nature walks and making stuff. We spent afternoons making soap and candles. We'd take edibles and then go on long hikes. And sometimes we'd just drive for hours, listening to music or talking about old times. Most of it was just us enjoying each other's company. Bailey was very adventurous, and it was nice to get out and see things that I probably wouldn't have sought out on my own. 2 months after meeting, Bailey was living with me as well. Bailey didn't have a lot, just a pull-along trailer and a lot of materials for making things, and it all fit pretty snugly in my garage. We spent a lot of our time just tooling around, seeing the sights, doing whatever we felt like. It was nice. But I learned one thing about Bailey very quickly. Bailey was impetuous and prone to flights of fancy. It didn't matter where we were going or what we were doing. If Bailey saw it and she wanted to have a closer look at it, we were stopping. We stopped at too many farmers markets to count, multiple yard sales, and she stopped me on the way to my cousin's funeral so that she could check out what amounted to be a tourist trap. I didn't really mind. We were the best dressed pair at the state's largest totem pole. It was fun going on our little adventures. Sometimes we mixed things with substances that led them to be hazy when I tried to remember them, but a lot of the time we were just out enjoying each other's company. And that made it all worthwhile. It happened one afternoon while I was driving, as so many things usually do. I was telling Bailey a story about my childhood, and she laughed suddenly, which caused me to ask her what was so funny. "It's you, Mike." "Me?" I asked, not really getting it. "What about me?" "I swear, I don't know how you live before me. All your stories just seem to be you doing normal things. Haven't you ever done anything impetuous before me? Like, didn't you ever go on an adventure before I came along?" "Well, of course we did," I said, a little defensively. "We went and did things, saw stuff, did all sorts of stuff." "I don't mean like vacations," she said. It almost sounded disdainful. "I mean like, just went, did things because you feel like it. Like, just stopped to eat in a roadside diner because the exterior looked cool, or went to a state park you were passing by just because you wanted to see what it looked like inside." I thought about it and shook my head after a moment. "No, I guess we never did. And my parents were kind of generic, I suppose. We just never really did stuff like that." "Well, how about it? Are you ready for a real adventure?" I laughed. "Haven't we gone on enough adventures yet? We seem to go on adventures all the time." She smirked, and as usual, it was equal parts amusement and disdain. "I mean like a real adventure. I'm not talking about safe adventures like a farmer's market or a garage sale. I'm talking about somewhere where you're not sure if you'll come back at the end of the day. I'm talking about a real Tolkien adventure with elves and orcs and strange food, the whole shebang." I had to think about it for a minute. I'd always played it safe. I didn't eat at weird restaurants or stop at places where I didn't know the crowd, and it always kept me safe. Hanging out with Bailey, though, showed me that I might have been a little too locked into my habits. And maybe it was time to try something a little different. Maybe, like Bilbo before me, it was time to go on a real adventure. Bailey gave me this odd look, like a cat contemplating how best to get a rat. And when she pointed at a side road off to the left, I realized she had been planning this all along. "Take that road for a mile, and then I'll let you know where we're going from there." "Where are we?" But she held up a hand to silence me. "No questions. We're on an adventure, remember?" It was around lunchtime when we started out. The two of us planning to go down to Dolly's for hamburgers and fries, but it was nearly 5 o'clock when she said that we were getting close. We stopped for gas about an hour before I saw it, and Bailey still wouldn't answer any questions about the destination. I didn't know what we were getting close to, but when I saw the handmade sign for a roadside carnival, I figured that had to be our destination. It was August, and roadside carnivals were at a premium right now, it seemed. Most of them put ads in the circular, though, and didn't just leave signs on a half-abandoned roadway in the hopes that people would find them. I started to protest, but she was right. We were on an adventure, and adventures were rarely scheduled. We pulled up outside this little cow pasture, maybe 30 acres in all, and it was amazing what they had managed to do with so little space. It was like the carnivals I remembered from when I was a kid. It was one of those haphazard roadside attractions that you sometimes see thrown up out of nowhere. There were little tents with curiosities in them, a small corral for some malnourished animals, and a few rides with that barely hanging on sort of look. The whole place looked like it had just appeared out of some health department officer's fever dream, and as I killed the engine, the look on my face must have been far from enthused. "What?" Bailey asked. "If you wanted to go to a carnival, there's like a half dozen around here we could have gone to. We didn't have gone so far from home." "Those are safe carnivals," she said with a wink. "These carnivals aren't like the ones you find off Main Street. These carnivals are the kind that you find on internet posts and Reddit stories. These carnivals can get a little out of your comfort zone, but they're always tons of fun. You're coming, right? Or are you going to be an old fuddy-duddy?" I didn't want her to think of me as some old fossil, so I told her I would go, and off we went. I probably should have been a little bit suspicious, but there didn't seem to be any reason to.
Bailey had never really struck me as the dangerous type, and I didn't think that she would get me into any trouble that we couldn't get back out of again. The carnival was exactly as run down as I had feared it would be. The rides made noises like they were just barely working. The animals looked like they might have mange, and the curiosities seemed more like badly done taxidermy. It all seemed very held together by shoe leather and happy thoughts. The carnival workers were just as disreputable looking, and there were more orcs than elves, it seemed. All of them were missing teeth, and more than a few of them seemed to be missing fingers. They all leered like they couldn't wait to get a look at our cash, and I found myself clutching Bailey a little tighter than I strictly needed to. I wasn't opposed to having a little fun, but this was a lot outside of my comfort zone. These people could be criminals, and we were just getting ready to walk right in, and I looked down at Bailey. It was like she could read my mind and didn't approve of what she saw there. I buried my misgivings and started trying my best to have a good time. We rode some rides and had some fair food, but the longer we stayed, the more things stood out. What made me nervous was the way the carnival people kept looking at Bailey. They didn't leer so much as they looked at her the way that you look at people when you know them or you recognize them. Their smiles were a little too big, and their hellos were loaded with understanding. I know how that sounds. It sounds paranoid as hell, but I was starting to feel a little paranoid. It felt like they had expected us, and I wasn't sure these were the kinds of people I wanted to be expected by. Bailey just kept telling me to relax, have fun. She even offered me an edible to calm me down, which I refused. The longer it went on, the more my senses started tingling, telling me that something wasn't right here. I wanted to go home, but I wasn't going to be the one to break first either. Bailey had made it pretty clear that she thought I was a stick in the mud, and I didn't want to prove it by getting goosey over some offhanded looks. By about 8 o'clock, my back hurt, and I was ready to go home. I told Bailey as much, and she begged for just a little while longer. She said she hadn't been to one of these carnivals in a long time, and she just wanted to hang out for a little while longer. I told her I was ready to go, that I could see it on her face that she wanted to call me an old man and ask me if it was past my bedtime. I finally told her that I needed to go to the bathroom and that I was going to go look for a porta potty. Bailey rolled her eyes, clearly having guessed that I was uncomfortable, and went searching for a toilet while she went searching for more adventure. Thank God I did, or I might not have made it out. I was sitting in the porta potty, pants around my ankles, as I tried to figure out what I was going to do, and that's when I heard them. I didn't know them, but I assumed they were carnies. That might be an unfair assumption, but they just sort of sounded like carnival folk. They had thick accents and seemed to be discussing some event that was coming up. I didn't have a lot else to listen to, so I craned my neck and tried to hear what they were discussing. "How much longer until we spring it?" one of them asked. "You know as well as I do how this works," the other said. "They have a good time, they ride the rides, they eat some fair food, then we spring it on them. By then, they're too tired and full to do anything. That's how we always get them. And if it ain't broke, we ain't likely to fix it. Didn't look like he was gonna put up no fight anyways. Big enough, but he looks plain as milk. Thought he'd struggle more before we..." Then they moved off, and I lost the rest of the conversation. My blood ran cold. Sounded like these guys were getting ready to rob us, or worse. Who knew what they had planned? And I realized I had left Bailey unattended. I might have hurt her while I was gone, and that thought had me hiking up my pants and heading back into the carnival. It wasn't until then that I realized how few people were at this thing, and how most of them looked like the same carnival folk that I had just heard discussing our fate. If there were any other passers-by, then I didn't see them. It didn't bode well. I was more intent than ever that we needed to leave. I started looking for Bailey amongst the crowd, but I couldn't seem to find her. All the people were smiling a little too big as they watched me pass, and it was weird to be the focus of that much attention. You know how you can just feel it when someone's eyes are on you? Well, that's how I felt, and I didn't much care for it. It was very unsettling and made me think that
More than a couple of them might be in on the scheme. I was coming through the midway when I saw the group of them, the lead man pointing at me as they made a beeline for me. Two of them big old bruisers and the kind of thing Teamsters usually wear on mob shows. They were making their approach, trying to look casual, but it was all too apparent who they were coming for. Maybe they had already gotten Bailey, but I wasn't going to do any good if they got me too. I ducked between the two stalls, keeping my head low as I tried to get somewhere a little more public. That was made all the harder by the fact that no one else seemed to be here. It was like trying to blend in an empty field, and I finally ducked down behind one of the abandoned Midway booths and tried my best not to be seen. I must have been doing a pretty good job of it because the group went by with a lot of dark mumbling and more than a few glances to see how I eluded them. I just thought about standing up when I heard an all too familiar voice, and I was glad that I hadn't.
"We lost him,"
said a deep, raspy voice. "I told you guys not to lose him," Bailey said. And hearing her talk about me like that made my neck hair prickle. "I've spent the better part of 3 months getting him on the hook, and all you guys had to do was grab him when he got out of the bathroom."
"He can't have gone far. We'll find him,"
said the gravelly voice. "You'd better. The ritual's in 3 hours, and there'll be hell to pay if we don't have him." They moved away, and I was left standing there, wondering just who I had been dating for the last few months. What ritual were they talking about? What sort of people were they? I thought they all seemed a little too friendly with Bailey, and now it made sense. If this had all been some elaborate ruse, then I'd fallen for it hook, line, and sinker. I had to get out of here. I had to get away before they were able to do whatever it was they were planning to do. A quick peek over the stall showed me that there were only a few carnies at the end of the midway, and they weren't looking in my direction. I stayed low and started making my way around the sides of the booths so that I wouldn't be noticed. Most of them seemed too intent on looking for where I was to see me, and I made it a pretty good distance before I was finally spotted. I had come out near the concession stand, smelling the fried Oreos and the funnel cake, and that was when somebody yelled and said they'd found me. "There he is! I found him!" That seemed to fill me with adrenaline, and suddenly I was running for my life. I had to make it to the parking lot. I had to make it to my truck. I had to get out of here while there was still an out here to get to. Some of the bigger carnival guys tried to block my way, but I juked around them and kept running. The sounds and the smells of the carnival were jarringly nauseating at this point. They all whipped past me like a frantic merry-go-round, and I wasn't sure I was ever going to make it out. It all seemed like a little kid's nightmare more than anything, and every time I thought that I had made it away, another came looming up out of nowhere to block my path. For such a small carnival, there seemed to be nearly endless supplies of carnies, and I rejoiced when I saw the exit looming up as I passed a scrambler that was on the edge of the campground. The gate was made of flimsy-looking wood, but the ticket taker, a man that we had paid to get into this place, was wide enough to block it with just his body. I didn't think I was going to make it through. I didn't think there was any way. But when I hit him squarely with my shoulder, something I haven't done since high school, I bowled right over the top of him and just kept going. I made it to my car and was thankful that I hadn't locked it. I got in the driver's seat and crammed the key into the ignition, expecting them to start hammering on my truck at any minute. I expected them to just pick the truck up and move it. Some of them were big enough to do that, but they didn't. They didn't even touch the truck as I looked up at the carnival before screeching out of their little makeshift parking lot. And I saw why. They were arrayed around the rim of the carnival, just watching me from a distance, maybe of about 50 feet. They stood like worshippers in a church waiting for their preacher to come back. Bailey was among them, looking disappointed but not angry. Her eyes seemed to tell me that I'd be back, and that was the last I saw of her as I went blaring out of the parking lot and back towards home. I was glad that I had paid attention on the way in. Otherwise, I might not have made it. It took me a little while to get back, but I've never been so happy to see my home as I was when I finally came back to the front yard. I went inside. Took about 20 minutes to stop my hands from shaking before I called the police and told the sheriff what happened. I don't know if he believed me, but he agreed to go back and look into it. The sheriff and I had known each other for quite a while, and I think he knew enough to trust my judgment and that I wouldn't make up tall tales for no reason. He said he'd go back and have a look, and if he found anything, he'd let me know. and I had to be content with that for a moment. He came back to me that night, and it seemed that maybe he believed me, at least a little bit. It also seemed like maybe he'd seen something out there that made him a little bit glad that he hadn't been the subject of my story. We found something that was no carnival, but it was something. Seems like they left it all out there. There were rides and lights still going, and you could smell all the stuff frying even after they put out all the fires for the night. There was nobody there, not a soul, but all of us felt like somebody was watching it. Wherever they went in a hurry. I also found some other things that led us to believe you might not have been too far off about the sacrifice angle. There were clothes in one of the tents, clothes, wallets, stripped of cash, no identification. Some of those IDs were people in the database, some of them have been missing for a good long time. If your Bailey ever calls back again, let us know. We'd like to have a word with her about some of the company she's been keeping. I told him I would, but who knows if I'll still be alive to call in the morning. Bailey has a key to my house. He knows where I live. Quite a few of her things are still here. Who's to say? She might not decide to come back anyway. See if her sacrifice is still here. I don't know, maybe it was all just an act or a goof. But if you find yourself being courted by a strange woman who tries to lead you into adventure, be very wary. I don't know what or who they were trying to sacrifice me to, but it sounded like they might have needed another one. Very shortly.
Hey there kids, it's me, Mr. Creepypasta, and before we say goodnight, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching tonight's video, or for listening to tonight's episode of the podcast, if you were listening to the podcast on Spotify or wherever you get podcasts, or if you're watching the video on YouTube, which is the only place where I post videos. I really appreciate it, you guys, and I'd appreciate if you hit that thumbs up, you hit the subscribe button, and you hit the bell thing next to the subscribe button. As always, I want to give a very big thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon, patreon.com/MrCreepypasta. That is the main place you guys are able to support me if you guys want to be able to support me, which you absolutely don't have to do, but hey, thank you. And especially if you guys like, you can become one of these wonderful people whose names I mispronounce. People such as Diana Kraus, Acid System, Benjamin 2003, Blake Rattler, Bottle Coolant, Brandon Mendoza, Caltuna, Corey X Kenshin, Dakota Best, Daniel Polson, Dante Kincaid, Enchanted Buns, Eric Anthony Caruso, Estebeam, 15 Squirrels in a Trench Coat, Galaxy Gremlin, Hades Nephew, Himbo Jerry, Our Minute Second Time, Jay Kearns, Jed's Pet, Lou Cypher, Nick MC, Plant Piss, Red Shadow Cat, Remember the Sun, Salty Surprise, Samara Lynn, Scary Stories Fuel Me 32, Seclude, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Sky Harbor, Smiley the Psychotic, Sully Man, Holly Sue, Team Leo 76, The Chavez Brothers, The Ginger Bros, Tommy Walters, Viceroy Scorn, William Wellington, X Reaper 69, XX Lucky Cat XX, Zabold, Shadow Gardens, and Peaceful Buddha. Thank you all so much for being here. And as always, sweet dreams.
Night 4. The station feels wrong in a way I can't articulate. The fluorescent lights hum at a frequency that makes my teeth ache. Coffee tastes like copper. When I walked in for my shift, Morrison looked up from his desk, smiled, went back to his paperwork without saying a word. Not unusual, except Morrison always asks about the weather, always. For 3 years, every single shift. How's it looking out there, Harper? Today, nothing. Dale's at his desk typing with mechanical precision. His posture's too straight, his movements too measured. I tried to talk to him when I came in, ask him if he wanted to grab lunch later. He looked at me with eyes that didn't quite focus and said, "I don't know you." Then he went back to typing. Headache's constant now. Thick, pulsing pressure behind my eyes that makes the edges of my vision blur. When I blink, I sometimes see after images of things that aren't there. A tall figure standing in the corner, a hand reaching for my shoulder, shape of someone's face, pressed against the window, watching. I've been staring at the same incident report for 20 minutes. The words keep sliding off the page. At 14:37, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but the area code was local. I almost didn't answer. My hand was shaking when I picked it up. Harper. The voice was tight with fear. Thomas Ockbeck. I need to talk to you, not at the station. Can you meet me? Thomas, what's wrong? Not on the phone. His breathing was ragged. The old fish camp, north of town. The one by Otter Creek, you know it. I did. Abandoned for years, just a few rotting shacks on the ice. All right, yeah, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Come alone, he said. And then quieter. I'm being followed. The line went dead. I grabbed my coat and keys. Auntie was at the dispatch desk when I passed, her fingers moving across the keyboard with that same unnatural fluidity. She looked up as I walked by, her smile too wide, showing too many teeth. Going somewhere, dear. Routine patrol. In the middle of your shift. Her head tilted just slightly, same angle the walker had used. You should rest, Benjamin. You look so tired. I'm fine. Are you? She stood up, moving around the desk towards me. I backed towards the door. I've been having such a hard time lately. The headaches, the confusion. Sarah told me you've been seeing things. My blood went cold. You talked to Sarah? Of course. We're all so worried about you. Her hand reached out, fingers cold even through my sleeve. Perhaps you should take some time off before something happens. I pulled away and pushed through the door into the brutal cold. Behind me, I heard her laugh. The drive to Otter Creek took 45 minutes. The landscape was flat and featureless, an endless expanse of white broken only by the occasional stunted tree. The sky pressed down like a lid. I kept checking my rearview mirror, but the road behind me was empty. The fish camp appeared like a wound in the snow. 3 shacks, their walls gray and skeletal, leaning into the wind. Thomas's truck was parked at an angle, driver's door still open. I killed my engine and stepped out into the screaming cold. Thomas! The wind swallowed my voice. I approached the nearest shack, my hand on my service weapon. A door hung from one hinge, creaking with each gust. Inside, the floor was thick with drifted snow. Overturned chair, rusted kerosene heater. Thomas! I called again. Here! I spun. He was standing behind me, maybe 15 feet away. His face was haggard, eyes sunken, red-rimmed. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. You all right? He shook his head. It's been following me for 3 days. Tall, thin, like a shadow standing up. I see it in my rearview mirror at the edge of my property. Sometimes I hear it walking on my roof at night. Thomas, I need you to tell me the truth. His voice cracked. Is this because of my daughter? Relief flooded through me, so intense I almost staggered. Yes, Nika, you remember her. His face went blank. Who? Nika, your daughter. 8 years old. I found her 4 nights ago. I saved her life. I don't have a daughter. The words were flat, automatic. I have a son, Tobias. He's 6. No, you came to the station. You brought me fish. You said, I've never been to the station. He took a step back. I don't know what you're talking about. Thomas, please. I pulled up my phone, scrolling through photos. I had to have something, some proof, but when I got to the night of the rescue, there was nothing. Just a gap in the timeline, photos from 2:45, then nothing until 4:23. You called me, I said desperately. 20 minutes ago. You said you were being followed. I called you because it's getting worse. His voice dropped to a whisper. The shadow, it's getting closer. Last night, it stood at my bedroom window. I could see its outline against the glass, and Benjamin... He looked at me with naked terror. It was wearing your coat. The cold suddenly felt colder. What are you talking about? Your SAR coat. I could see the patch, your name, Harper B. But the letters were backwards. You were shaking now. What did you do? What did you bring back with you? I saved a little girl, I said, my voice low and steady. Your daughter. I don't have a daughter. The scream tore from him as he fumbled for his car door handle, his eyes wide with pure terror. I've never had a daughter. Get away from me. He pushed my hand away. He got into the car and shut the door. The engine started. He drove off down the street. The taillights shrank in the dark and then were gone. I took a step forward, plea on my lips, but a hand fell on my shoulder, its grip firm and final. I turned. Dale was standing there, smiling, that same warm, vacant smile I'd seen on my family, on Morrison, on everyone. Hi, Ben. His voice was too loud, too cheerful. What are you doing all the way out here? Dale? My heart was hammering. How did you... When did you... I was checking the nets. Caught some nice car today. He gestured towards the third shack. Want to see? His shadow was wrong. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the snow. Mine stretched out beside me. A normal human silhouette. But Dale's was too tall. Too thin, stretching back towards the shack in a shape that didn't match his body. Dale, I said slowly, I think you should step back. Why? That same bright smile. I'm just here to help. You don't fish, Dale. You're vegetarian. Told me 1,000 times. The smile didn't falter. Of course I fish. I've been fishing here for years. No, I said. You haven't. For a moment, nothing moved. The wind died, even the creaking of the shack fell silent. Dale stood perfectly still, that same smile frozen on his face like a photograph. Then his head tilted. Slowly, mechanically, the exact angle the walker had used. You should go home, Benjamin, he said. The voice was still Dale's, but layered underneath was something else, something that sounded like wind through empty buildings. Your family misses you. That's not my family. Isn't it? The head tilted further, past any natural range of motion. Sarah's making dinner. The kids are doing homework. Everything is exactly as it should be. You're the one who's wrong. You're the one who doesn't fit. Behind him, the shadow elongated, stretched. The sunlight seemed to bend around it, creating a void in the shape of a person. I reached for my service weapon, but my hand was shaking too badly to draw it. Dale, if you're still in there, I'm fine, he said, his voice still bright. Better than fine. I don't have that headache anymore. I don't have those nightmares. I'm not afraid. The smile widened. You could be like this too, Benjamin. No more pain, no more fear, just peace. That's not peace, I whispered. That's nothing. The thing wearing Dale's face took a step closer. In the direct light, I could finally see what Thomas had seen. The skin wasn't quite right. Too smooth, too uniform, like someone had painted over a surface that was never meant to hold paint. And underneath, where the shadow met the snow, there was no texture, there was no depth. Just a flat, absolute black. I grabbed the flashlight from my belt and shone it directly at Dale's face. For a fraction of a second, the light passed through him. I could see the shack behind, the gray wood visible through his chest like he was made of smoke, and then he solidified again, but the smile was gone. His face had gone slack, features settling into something smooth and featureless. The mouth was too wide, the eyes too far apart. "You looked," it said in a voice that was no longer Dale's. "Rule 2. You're not supposed to look." "It's 2 in the afternoon," I said, backing towards my truck. "Rules only apply after 3 a.m. The thing that wasn't Dale laughed. It sounded like ice crackling on a frozen lake. "The rules changed, Benjamin. When you took the debt, you changed them, and now we can come anytime, anywhere, as long as that ledger needs balancing." Behind it, more figures were emerging from the shacks. Tall, impossibly thin, their shapes cutting sharp silhouettes against the white expanse, but these weren't shadows. These were people. The man from the third shack, a woman in a parka, an elder with a walking stick. All of them smiling with the same vacant expression, all of them moving with that same fluid, unnatural grace. "Dale," I tried one more time. "Dale, I know you're in there. You showed me the photo. You remember Nika. You remember the rules." For a moment, something flickered behind those two wide eyes. A spasm of recognition, of fear. "I looked," Dale whispered. His voice suddenly his own again. "Oh God, I looked right at it. It was wearing my mother's necklace, the one I buried with her. I saw it, and I looked, and now..." His eyes snapped back to that placid black. The flicker was gone. "Dale zones out sometimes," the thing said in that layered, wrong voice. "He'll be fine. He'll be better. He'll be balanced." Dale turned away from me, his movements suddenly jerky and mechanical. He walked back towards the shacks with rigid, upright posture, not looking back. I ran for my truck. The walkers didn't follow. They just stood there, a line of figures against the white, watching as I fumbled with my keys, as I gunned the engine, as I fishtailed away from the camp. In my rearview mirror, I saw Dale get into his truck. He sat perfectly still, hands at 10 and 2, staring straight ahead. Then he drove away in the opposite direction. I made it back to town at 16:30. The sun was already setting, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple. I didn't go to the station, I went to the library instead. Margaret was at the front desk, stamping books with metronomic precision. When she saw me, her face lit up with that same too-wide smile. "Benjamin, how lovely to see you." I need to see the old SAR records again, from 1956. "Of course, dear." She stood up with impossible fluidity. "Right this way." She led me to the basement. The stairs creaked under our feet. The lights flickered. "You know," she said conversationally, "I've been thinking about our last conversation, about Auntie." "What about her?" "You asked how old she was." Margaret stopped at the bottom of the stairs, turning to face me. In the dim light, I could see that her shadow was too long, stretching back up the stairs in a shape that didn't match her body. "That was very rude, Benjamin. You shouldn't ask elders their age." "Margaret? When did you start working here?" "Oh, I've been here for years." "How many years?" Her smile didn't waver. "Does it matter?" I pushed past her into the archives. The boxes were where I'd left them 4 days ago, but when I opened them, the photos were different. The group photo from 1956, the one with Auntie in the back row. She was gone, just a gap where she should have been, the people on either side standing slightly too far apart. Dedication ceremony, 1968. No auntie. Wartime civil defense meeting, no auntie. I went through every box, every file, every photograph. She'd been erased, removed from the record like she'd never existed. Except for one photo. At the bottom of the last box, tucked into an unmarked envelope, was a single black and white photo. It was old, the paper yellowed and brittled. The date on the back read February 3rd. She looked exactly the same. Same gray hair, same smile. The caption on the back was in Russian, but someone had translated it in faded pencil. The witch Akna receives her mark. May God have mercy on her soul. I heard footsteps on the stairs. I shoved the photo in my pocket and turned. Margaret was standing in the doorway, backlit by the stairway lights. Her silhouette was too tall. It was too thin. "Find what you were looking for?" she asked. I didn't answer. I pushed past her and ran up the stairs. Behind me, I heard her laugh. Her laugh just like Akna. "A few more shifts left, Benjamin," she called after me. "The ledger is almost balanced." I burst out into the cold evening air and ran for my truck. The streets were empty, the windows of the houses glowing with warm light. Families gathered for dinner, everything normal and perfect. And wrong. My radio crackled to life. "Unit 17, this is dispatch," Auntie's voice. Calm, professional. "We have a welfare check at 342 Maple Street. Requesting your response." 342 Maple Street. My house. "Negative," I said to the radio. "I'm off duty." "Benjamin," her voice dropped, becoming intimate, threatening. "Your family is waiting for you. Sarah made a pot roast, your favorite. Don't you want to go home?" I looked up in my rearview mirror. She was in my back seat, not a reflection, not a shadow. Auntie herself, flesh and blood, and impossibly there, her hands folded in her lap, that patient smile on her face. "You can't run from this," she said softly. "The debt doesn't disappear just because you're afraid. It follows you, it waits. And when the ledger finally balances, you'll be grateful for the peace." I threw open my door and fell out into the snow. When I looked back, the truck was empty. And I could still hear her voice, carried on the wind. "Few shifts left, Benjamin. Then you'll understand. Then you'll stop fighting. Then you can be accounted for."
Hey there kids, it's me, Mr. Creepypasta. I just want to say thank you guys for watching tonight's video, listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody on this list of Patreons. If you'd like to join this list of names that I frequently mispronounce, you can check the description in the link down below, which I really appreciate because this helps me, one, keep the lights on, and two, helps me pay authors for the stories that you hear on this channel. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody on this list of Patreons. Some of these amazing folks are Diana Kraus, Acid System, Blake Rattler, Brandon Mendoza, Britta Crow, Caltuna, Chicago Hitman, Corey Kenshin, Crusader Chocobo, Dakota Best, Daniel Polson, Dante Kincaid, Enchanted Buns, Estebean, Hades Nephew, Himbo Jerry, Our Minute Seconds Time, Ingegerd Solstrom, Jay Kearns, Jadis Pet, McMog, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Psychomel, Plant Piz, Red Shadow Cat, Remember the Sun, Salty Surprise, Samara Lynn, Seclude, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Sky Harbor, Smiley the Psychotic, Sully Man, Tully Sue, Team Leo 76, The Demented Voice in Your Head, The Chavez Brothers, The Ginger Bros, Tommy Walters, Viceroy Scorn, William Wellington, Your Bro Keegan, Zabub, and Shadow Gardens. A huge thank you to you guys, everybody who shows up in the description down below, and honestly, anybody who can pledge even just like $1 a month. You guys are absolutely amazing. I cannot continue doing this channel without you, and your support means the world to me. And that goes to everybody, not just on Patreon, but honestly just you guys out there who just subscribe, those guys out there who are just listening or putting on the nonstop radio live stream while it's running in their sleep. I appreciate you guys greatly, especially during this kind of rough time for me. Having you guys around, and I mean this wholeheartedly, it is incredible. So, hey, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being a part of this. And as always, folks, sweet dreams.
My first and only encounter with ghosts happened because I called Louise Pilkerman lousy, Pilkerman, right in front of the class. I hadn't meant to, not at all. A month before it happened, our teacher, Mrs. Dandridge, had told us that we were going on an end-of-the-year field trip. Already great news in my book. I loved how weird it felt to walk along in a herd with my friends, taking in the sights of a place I probably wouldn't have been able to visit normally. "And this is going to be a special trip," she continued, grinning like Firuza Balk. "This year, we're going to Roseford Hotel and we're going to be staying the night." That gave me the shakes. For those of you who don't know, Roseford is one of the premier weird landmarks in New England. Look it up. There's rarely a top 10 list that doesn't at least mention it, and the discussions about the life and death of its chief architect, the original manager, Emil Roseford, are still as strong today as they were back then. To put it succinctly, Roseford is kind of like the Winchester Mystery House on psychedelics, and it is well known for being haunted. I wasn't a fan of ghosts, but I was a fan of weird houses and architectural novelties, so I was over the moon. We had 3 weeks before we were going to go, which was 3 whole weeks in which to catastrophize and worry myself sick. With nightmares about getting hurt and missing the trip, or getting there and finding out it wasn't as cool or interesting as I had built it up to be, growing in frequency and severity. The night before I had a nightmare and then decided to read until I felt better, which ended up being all night, so I wasn't fully awake or aware by the time I actually got into class. I think I sat in the wrong seat and nearly fell on my face before Miss Dandridge had even gotten there. When she did get in, she picked me for roll call. I think to try and make me wake up a bit more. God bless her. And I did well with the first few names, but then I got to Louise and something in my brain, some process, stuttered and I said, "Lousy." Louise Pilkerman was the scariest girl in school, at least to me. She was taller than average, tall and stocky, with big hands, bad acne, greasy hair, and chapped lips that never seemed to smile, even a little bit. Other boys said that her parents were both alcoholic redneck bikers who were always in and out of jail. They were actually both in the military and were very proud of having spotless records, and that Louise was a thug who sold dope to other kids. She was certainly free with her fists, but she never so much as got a glare from a cop, as far as I know, and later on in high school, she'd get the cops called on someone who was selling drugs. So, I was terrified of her. I was small, skinny, and awkward, and she seemed to radiate this cold anger like a wall that knocked everyone back. She reminded me of movies about domestic abusers or gangsters, and I had just insulted her in front of 20 other kids. Not everyone laughed when I called her lousy, but enough did. And when you're a kid and you've been humiliated like that, it seems like everyone is laughing at you. I tried to apologize. I really did, but she wouldn't hear it. "I'm going to get you back," she growled before we got on the bus. She sat in the back. I sat as close to the front as I could and tried to read a book with the shadow of that promise hanging over my head, scared out of my mind. At least until we got there and I stepped out into the sunlight and actually saw Roseford up close and in the flesh. And the world narrowed down to just that for a little while. You see, Emil Roseford was a stage musician turned architect who spent 15 years of his life planning and constructing a place that would incorporate all the different kinds of architecture that he'd seen on his trips around the world. And the result was chaos that you could touch and inhabit, like an I Spy book with buildings or a living 3D collage. From above, the whole mess looked like a giant protozoa, maybe a very lopsided star, bloated and prickly on one side, stretched like taffy on the other. Each section was a jumble. There were brick and stone, metal and glass and wood. There were domes and colonnades, bays and belfries, gables and eaves, Shion-zukuri and Old Gothic, Colonial and Victorian and Grecan, all welded together. I could have stared forever, trying to pick out every little detail, but Miss Dandridge only gave us about a minute before most of the rest of my class ran out of attention span. We spilled into the northern lobby, which was cool and quiet and more or less what I'd imagined a swanky hotel to be like. Red carpeting, a high barrel vault roof, white pillars, clusters of couches, and a tour guide waiting to show us around. Her name was Annie, and she was great. I remember her being a carefree, laid-back college chick who took the job because she honestly thought it was interesting. The hotel's layout was so chaotic it required a bunch of laminated maps to navigate, but Annie had definitely been there for a while because she never so much as looked at any of them. She took us from room to room and laid everything out. If there was a script that she was supposed to go by, she probably chucked it right in the trash after the first few read-throughs because she added so much history and so many weird bits of trivia, stuff even I didn't know about, and I thought I'd researched it all pretty well. There were a few things I knew, like how the planning stage took 5 years because Rovesford kept going to new places, falling in love with new bits of architecture, and then deciding to add them in, or how he passed over his oldest son and gave his daughter the stewardship of the place and his fortune, which in the 19th century was a pretty big deal, caused a huge scandal. It wasn't until we got to the game room that I actually heard something that I hadn't before. There we all were, in the middle of this huge comma-shaped room with a red shag and oak paneling, trying to keep out of the way of the construction guys who are packing up the musty old mod furniture and the old arcade machines. When in the middle of telling us about how they were going to refurbish the room, Louise put her hand up and asked, "Are you guys going to open up the Blue Wing?" Behind us there were two people, a construction guy and a woman in a business suit. Both were arguing quietly, and when they heard her ask that, Louise wasn't very soft-spoken. They turned around and glared at her. She glared right back and cocked her chin defiantly. I don't think Annie noticed any of that, though. She just laughed and told us the whole wing was going to stay closed up, and that it was eventually going to be torn down from the rest of the building. She asked, "Where'd you hear about the Blue Wing?" Louise said, "On the internet. They had an article on Ogrish." Then a boy asked what the Blue Wing was, and I saw the mischief come alive in Annie's eyes. She looked around, then lowered her voice and said, "What, you guys don't know? The last owner of this hotel was a murderer." That was my introduction to Grace Rovesford, the last of that family line and the one who gave the place its reputation. Grace was born at the tail end of the 40s, raised by two parents who had died right next to her in a car crash one evening in 1953. They'd taken a back road in Nevada and swerved to avoid a coyote. Grace was pinned to the dash for 13 hours before help came. Annie said that she ended up locked in an asylum for a decade afterwards and came out worse off than she had been when she was thrown in. But I did some research, and she was actually admitted to a highly regarded naturalistic retreat on the outskirts of California, and it was only for a year. There's not much about her I could find in the years before she fully took over the inn, but I think the rest of Annie's story turned out pretty much true. She became a minor celebrity in the hippie community in the early 60s, wrote a whole bunch of papers on everything from homeopathy to astral projection, and published a book of poetry called To Dance in Dreamland, to Scorn the Reaper. In 65, she actually took charge of the hotel and added her own flair, taking what she'd loved about San Francisco and transplanting as much of it as she could. If you look at the pictures from the time, every room looks like a blacklight poster with mod furniture, space-age appliances to top it all off. A lot of the old clientele hated it. They thought it looked like, and I quote, a sleazy head shop. But the hotel had been in a slouch by then, and there weren't many of these people left. The new look actually worked, and for 4 years it was as lively as it had ever been when it was first opened. Tourists loved the new novelty, and the hippies loved that it was a place meant for them, overseen by one of them. Grace used to come down and greet her guests at breakfast. People said that she had a smile like a slice of sunshine. She could make you feel happier just by being in her presence. At night, she and some of her old commune who had set up shop there would sing and get high, and she'd talk about her ideas and the things that she'd seen in her dreams. 4 years of prosperity. 4 years of peace. And then it all came crashing down. Grace got sick. Very sick. She started keeping to herself more and more. Her lungs began to shut down, and so there was no more singing. Did you know that there was a ballad written about her last year's? It's called The Silence Comes to Stay, and that's what it was like, apparently. People left. The mood was gone. Grace moved from her room on the northwest spire to a wing her mother had added on. She had her friends paint the walls and ceiling blue, and then she locked herself away with only a couple of people closest to her. She hired a manager to run things, and she stayed where she was. People asked after her health and were told that she was, quote, engaged in a healing contemple. Things evened out for a while. Some people even said they could hear her singing some nights. And then a man named Jasper Arnott went missing. His wife said he'd gotten up in the middle of the night and hadn't come back. She looked, and when she couldn't find anything, she got the staff to look with her. The search went on for hours, and then a maid found Arnott laying in the eastern garden, his bathrobe covered in blood, and his head missing. The police never found the head or the weapon that did it, but they did find Grace's prints on the bathrobe. All of her friends went peacefully, and so did she. She died of cancer in December 1969, a month before her trial. The investigations also implicated her in a dozen other missing persons cases, but nothing ever came of it. Annie didn't tell it quite like that. She shortened it, added something about gardening shears, for effect, and it worked, too. I was scared out of my mind. Not even Mrs. Dandridge announcing that we were going to have a pizza night made me feel any better. We ran around and played where we were allowed. I sat by an empty koi pond and watched the little vents bubble away. I crossed bridges, ducked through trap doors, used slides sculpted to look like dolphins leaping from the water. I even found a narrow passage hidden behind a suit of armor, just like in the Hardy Boys. I wandered it for a bit before I realized that I had gone farther than I was supposed to. I was halfway back when I heard two people talking in hushed, angry tones, a man and a woman. You need to find out who's doing this. I don't care how.
We don't know. Just keeps getting broken. We seal it up. Next day, it's all in pieces on the floor.
In any other situation, I might have listened in, but as it stood with the anxiety rolling around inside my stomach, the idea of hearing an argument, and an adult argument at that, made me feel like a mouse in front of a hurricane. When I managed to rejoin the pack, it was time for pizza and soda and movies in the viewing room. By the end of it, I had a gut full of junk food and a head full of worries and fuzz. We were split up into littler groups and led to our bedrooms for the night. I think I was probably asleep before I even hit the bed. I wasn't asleep for long, though, which I should have expected given the circumstances. I had a horrible nightmare about being trapped in a dark, close space, hearing teeth scraping over something hard. I woke up all at once in a bed that wasn't mine, in a dark room I didn't know. Things felt so unreal and slow and heavy, and all I could think was, I need to get out of here. I don't remember leaving the room or what hallways I went down. I only came to my senses when I slammed into someone's back. I fell on my rear and the other person gasped, stumbled, and spun around. It was Louise. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed. Those big hands of hers closed into fists. For an instant, I saw her knuckles straining white against her skin, and I could almost feel them digging into my cheek or busting my nose. Then she took a step towards me, and I ran. I ran as fast as I could, and she followed. Neither of us noticed the change in wallpaper from cream to faded orange and purple, or the plastic sheets over everything, the white bucket stacked in one nook, the big industrial vacuums humped up against the wall, or the fresh shards of plaster on the floor. All I could register was an open door, and the hallway was wide and dark like a throat. Every door was shut, and dust puffed under my sneakers with every step I took. I made it to the end of the hall, to one last door before Louise grabbed the back of my shirt and threw me into the wall. Then she was in my face. Her eyes gleamed in the low light. "You made them laugh at me, you little freak," she hissed. Her breath was cold and smelled like cola. I tried to explain myself, but she shoved me back into the wall and hit me hard enough to make my teeth click together. It tasted blood. My guts churned and I prepared for more, but Louise had backed off. She looked at me, at the blood, with wide eyes like she'd never seen it before. Then she looked at her hand. She told me later that had been the first time she'd hurt someone bad enough to make them bleed, and that it made something click in her mind. It became real to her, she said. There was silence between us. I still cowered. Louise still looked at me like I was about to keel over and die right there, but there was stillness. I could breathe. She could think properly. And that's when we noticed the music. I say noticed and not heard because it sounded like it had been playing ever since before we'd even gone down the hallway, but I don't know why. It sounded like music from a long time ago, fluty and rambling and soft. It made me think of people with wooden flutes, letting their music wind down under doorways and through grassy meadows. It's music of dark forests, standing stones, deserts that never ended, and obscure islands with ancient palaces, temples made of marble. It was so weird that we had to turn around, and when we did, we saw that the door was gone, vanished like it had never been installed in the first place. Beyond it was a big room with a low ceiling. There were couches and bare mattresses and rugs on the floor and an old censer hanging from an IV stand. There was light coming from it, cold, pale, and blue. There was someone in there. We could hear them stepping and hopping softly but ceaselessly, giggling under their breath. We couldn't see anyone. Neither of us made a sound. We didn't know what we were seeing, not really, but we both knew that we were seeing something that we weren't supposed to see. I took a step back. Louise did too. Something was wrong with the light. It made the patterns in the rugs gape like black holes, and if you looked at it too long, you felt like it wasn't actually light at all. Then something creaked to our right. We turned and saw that another door had vanished. It was dark outside, but the light showed us enough. There was someone in the room, someone who was coming out. I saw the hands first, flung out in front of it, groping blindly with fat, black fingers, then arms that jerked and twitched. And then the rest. A man was leaving his room, a man in stained boxers and skin the color of standing water, dripping, swollen with bite marks all over. He didn't have a head. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My reality was drawing into a single point. Things were too clear, too real. I was watching a headless, rotting corpse feel its way towards me, hands grasping at air, the torn flesh of its neck jutting as silent as the light we were standing in. And then Louise screamed, and we were running. I heard its feet then, taking quick, stumbling steps. He knew where we were now. My heart was pounding so loud, I almost didn't notice how the music had turned sour. The hallway stretched on and on. There was no more dust or cobwebs. The doors were vanishing two by two, and the light revealing the deep, cold blues of the walls and ceiling had been painted in blue like Saturn or somewhere far off. Louise reached the exit first and slammed into it. It wasn't locked. She tumbled out into the red carpet and plaster chunks. I don't know why I did it, but just before my body passed through, I looked back. And if Louise hadn't caught me by the hand and dragged me behind her, I don't really know how to articulate it, but I think she saved my life. We ran until we saw lights on under doors, normal ones. One of Louise's friends heard us and opened the door, and when she saw us in good light, she called for grown-ups. The last thing I really remember for a while was hearing Louise asking if I was okay. I really wasn't. Apparently, Louise told the adults what we'd seen. I was in no state to say anything, so I couldn't corroborate her story, but I still got people talking. I saw the news story later once I was better. The police had come. This time they'd found something. They'd found 15 heads, wrapped in duct tape, set behind the walls of the Blue Wing. There were some arrests. I think it was a little too late. Louise asked what I'd seen when I looked back. Once, years later, at a party, where she was too drunk to stop herself from asking, and I was too drunk to lie. I told her, and now I'll tell you. The room had snuck up behind us while our backs were turned, like a tiger. It shortened the whole length of the hall until it was 2 feet from the exit. And I saw everything. They were dancing in a circle, some in pajamas, some in bathrobes, some in less. All dead, all headless. Split heels beat the floor, maggots fell from them and disappeared into the patterns on the rugs. They lurched and pirouetted. They spun while the music played. It had really spoiled by then. It sounded bad, worse than I can really explain, just old and greedy. It pressed into my ears like soft fingers. It tugged at my skin. And the crowd parted a little, and I saw someone at the center of the circle playing a flute. Grace, probably. I can't even describe what she'd swelled up and stretched out into. They've torn the Blue Wing down. The rest of the hotel is fine. It's still running. Sometimes I browse the internet, I look for new sightings, but there hasn't been anything. All's quiet there, which is good. Louise wrote a book called The Scratchings and Mutterings, The Haunted Hotels of New England. If you're reading this, I hope you're doing well, and I'm sorry I called you lousy. It really was an accident.
Hey, did you like that creepypasta story that you heard today? I bet you did, because you stuck around to hear the outro. So, if you want to find more creepypasta stories like this, check out the links in the description down below that lead you over to the Creepypasta Collection, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 1 and Volume 2 also have a bunch of stories from some of the best authors I've worked with in the past 15 years, which I think is pretty high praise, seeing as it's like, what, 4,000 stories? That's right, 4,000 stories. Subscribe, you'll see them. But yes, 2 books available, Amazon, link down below, check them out. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody on this list of Patreons. Some of these amazing folks are Diana Kraus, Acid System, Blake Rattler, Brandon Mendoza, Britta Crow, Paltuna, Chicago Hitman, Corey Kenshin, Crusader Chocobo, Dakota Best, Daniel Polson, Dante Kincaid, Enchanted Buns, Estabine, Hades Nephew, Himbo Jerry, Our Minute Seconds Time, Ingegerd Solstrom, Jay Kearns, Jadis Pet, McMog, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Psychomel, Plant Piz, Red Shadow Cat, Remember the Sun, Salty Surprise, Samara Lynn, Seclude, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Sky Harbor, Smiley the Psychotic, Sully Man, Tully Sue, Team Leo 76, The Demented Voice in Your Head, The Chavez Brothers, The Ginger Bros, Tommy Walters, Viceroy Scorn, William Wellington, Your Bro Keegan, Zabub, and Shadow Gardens. A huge thank you to you guys, everybody who shows up in the description down below, and as always, folks, sweet dreams.
Night 3. The headache started on night 2, by the way. Now it's something else. Thick, solid pressure behind my eyes, pulsing in time with my heartbeat, feels like less like a headache, more like my skull's trying to unmake itself from the inside. I was at my desk staring at an incident report until the letters bled together. When Nika's father shouldered his way into the station, his daughter, Nika, was a silent shadow behind him. Her small face far too serious. "Harper!" Heaving the cooler onto the break room table with a wet thud. 40 pounds of silver salmon for saving my girl." I stood, the motion sending a fresh, hot spike through my temples. This is too much. I was just doing my job. My objection died as Nika's voice, small but impossibly clear, cut through the station's low hum. "Auntie showed me where to wait," she said. "She said someone would come before the bad thing did." Then the studio went silent. One moment there was the familiar clutter of noise, Chief Morrison's low chuckle, the clack of Dale's keyboard, static hiss of the radio. The next, there was nothing. It was as if a glass bell had dropped over the entire room. Morrison was frozen, his coffee cup an inch from his lips. Dale's hand hovered over his mouse, his fingers poised but unmoving. The radio static did not just go quiet. The absence of it was a physical weight in the air. My gaze dropped to Nika. Her dark eyes were fixed on me, and they had a knowledge that had no business in the face of an 8-year-old girl. They were ancient and terrified. A full 3 seconds passed. The pressure in my head tightened. Then the world rushed back in, too loud, too fast. "Nika, honey, you know Auntie. She's everyone's friend. She's probably just praying for you is all." He took a sip of his coffee. "Right," Dale chimed in, his voice a notch too high. He clicked his mouse with an uneasy force. "Kid Auntie's got a sixth sense about these things, like a guardian angel." He laid a heavy hand on his daughter's head. "Do not go giving the officer your wild stories, Nook." But Nika did not look away from me. She didn't even blink. "Have you seen her since that night?" she asked. The silence returned, but this time it felt deliberate, a solid wall. "Hey," I said, my voice sounding too loud. No one turned. I forced a chuckle. "Morrison? Dale?" I waved my hand in front of the chief's face. His eyes didn't flicker. He took another sip of coffee, staring right through me. My chuckle died in my throat. The truth, cold and absolute, settled in my gut. Nika was the only one who could see me. The throbbing in my skull intensified, a sudden vicious twist. "I see her all the time," I managed, my voice rough. She helps with dispatch once in a while, Nika. No. Her voice was flat, certain, a verdict. Have you really looked at her? I mean, truly looked. Once you do, you'll know what I mean. He was already pulling her towards the door, his apologies trailing behind him. Kids and their imagination, you know how it is. Thanks again for everything, Harper. The door clicked shut. Instantly, the station snapped back to life. The clatter of keyboards, the murmur of conversation, the rustle of paperwork. It was all there, but it was wrong. It was like watching a film where the audio was out of sync. A hollow performance. I was the only one who had missed their cue. I stood, rooted to the spot, staring at the dark plastic cooler, beaded with cold sweat. And a cold, solid thought formed in my mind, cutting through the pain. What does Auntie look like? I see her every day. I take my coffee when she tells me to. I nod at her updates over the radio. But I cannot, for the life of me, summon a single specific detail of her face. Not the curve of her smile, not the shape of her hands, not the way she moves through a room. It's all just a pleasant blur. I spend my lunch break in the basement archives. Down here, the world is reduced to the grit of dust on my fingertips and the dry whisper of turning pages. When my phone lights up with my wife's call, I watch the screen go dark. Everything else can wait. Everything else is just noise. The station's records go back to 1962, when the former SR program was established. Before that, it just scattered reports of the municipal buildings, library annex. I start with recent files, pull Auntie's employment records from 2020. There she is, photo ID clipped to a W-2. Same Auntie. Gray hair, pulled back, reading glasses on a beaded chain, warm smile. Date of birth, March 15th, 1960. Another form, employee health insurance enrollment. Same photo, maybe a few less wrinkles. Date of birth, March 15th, 1960. Pension paperwork. Date of birth, March 15th, 1960. Original hiring document. Photos slightly faded, but it's her. Same face, same smile. Date of birth, March 15th, 1960. I've looked back and forth between the photos. The lighting is different, the background changes, but her face stays exactly the same age in every single image across 30 years. The headache is an ice pick now, driving into my frontal lobe with every heartbeat. I drive to the library and request historical records, search and rescue reports, anything from the region. The librarian, an elder named Margaret, peers at me over her glasses. That's quite a project. What are you hoping to find? I just need to understand the history, I say, my voice tight. My phone buzzes in my pocket. Again, I know it's her. I know I'm stressing her out, but the thought's a distant thing, drowned out by the static in my head. I have days, maybe less. This takes precedence. Everything takes precedence. She brings me a photo album, community newsletters, newspaper clippings. 1956. Group photo of volunteers after a successful rescue. In the back row, partially obscured, Auntie. Same gray hair. Same glasses. 1968. Dedication ceremony for the new station. The crowd. Auntie. 1987, wartime civil defense meeting. Photos grainy, black and white, but I can make out her silhouette in the second row. Margaret leans in to look, her pleasant librarian smile still in place. It doesn't waver as her eyes track Auntie's face across the decades. She doesn't startle or question, she simply nods, as if confirming a known fact. That's Auntie in all of them, isn't it? She murmurs. Funny how some folks just have that timeless quality. My mouth is dry. How old is she? Oh, you know elders. Margaret pats my shoulder, her touch making me flinch. It's rude to ask. Why do you want to know? She adds. Because it doesn't make sense. The words scream inside my skull because I want to hold these photos side by side, force you to see that the same woman is in a photo from 1952 and a report from last year, because everyone is blind when they look at her. Instead, I say, just curious. Margaret's smile doesn't reach her eyes. Curiosity's good, Ben, but some things out there, they don't want to be understood. They just want to be. She walks away before I can ask what that means. I make it home at 6 p.m. with a headache drilling so deep I'm seeing halos around every light source. Sarah's waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed, jaw set in the way that means we're about to have the same fight we've been having for 3 months. You missed dinner again. I was working. You're always working. She's crying now. Angry tears. When you're here, you're not here, Ben. You're somewhere else with her. With who? Denise, the secretary. Don't play stupid. Everyone at the station talks. Sarah, I'm not. Then where were you today? Dale saw you in the archives for 2 hours, said you looked like you were researching something intense. What were you researching, Ben? I don't have a good answer. Can't explain that I was looking up photos of a 70-something dispatch operator who apparently hasn't aged since World War II. Can't explain that an 8-year-old girl warned me about a woman who's hypnotized the goddamn town. I can't explain any of it without sounding insane. So I say nothing. Sarah's face crumples. Get out. Sarah, get out! Go stay with whoever you've been running to. I don't care anymore. She shoved my jacket at me, pushing me towards the door. I grab my keys off the hook and stumble into the cold without a plan. I sit in the truck in the driveway, engine running, heat blasting. The station has a bunk room, but Dale's probably there. I have no friends in this town, not really, just co-workers and acquaintances. I could drive to Fairbanks, get a hotel, clear my head. Instead, I put the truck in reverse, and that's when I see it. A warm golden light spills from the kitchen window. The silhouette of my wife moves past the sink, and then the sound hits me. It's not the quiet I left, but the vibrant noise of a family meal, the clatter of plates, my son's high-pitched story, my daughter's giggling interruption, and underneath it all, a man's easy, resonant laugh. My laugh. I kill the engine and I step out into the freezing air, drawn to the window like a ghost. I peer inside. There they are. Sarah, the kids, and me. They're gathered around the table. The man at the head of the table leans back in his chair, a wide, relaxed smile on his face. It's an expression I haven't worn in years. He says something, and Sarah laughs, her real, unforced laugh, and reaches out to squeeze his arm. I'm running before I know I've moved. Up the porch steps, through the door which is unlocked, the sounds and smells of dinner, pot roast, my favorite, wash over me. I stand frozen on the hallway entrance, watching this perfect imitation of my life. Get out, I whisper. The words have no force. The man, the other me, turns his head. His eyes meet mine across the room, and he smiles, a slow, knowing smile. The room shifts. Suddenly, I'm the one sitting at the head of the table. The taste of the pot roast is in my mouth. My daughter tugs on my sleeve, and Sarah smiles at me from across the table. I try to stand to scream, but my body is a puppet. I feel my face form a warm, parental smile. I hear my own voice, but it's not mine say, "This is perfect." My eyes dart to the dark glass of the patio door. In its reflection, I see it. Standing in the corner of the kitchen, watching. The walker. It wears my SAR coat, its face a smudged photograph. It tilts its head, and my reflection in the glass mimics the gesture. Sarah's smile becomes fixed, her gaze intensifying. "We're so glad you're finally here, Ben," she says, her voice syrupy and wrong. "Stay with us." I throw myself backward, the chair clattering to the floor. I scramble on hands and knees towards the front door as their voices rise in a harmonious, desperate chorus. "Ben, don't go! Ben, we love you! Ben, your dinner is getting cold." I stumble into the truck, slam the locks, and force myself to look back. They're all at the kitchen window now. Sarah and the kids, they stand in a row staring out at me with identical, placid, vacant smiles. The drive to Auntie's cabin is a blur. My body operating on autopilot, my mind can no longer sustain, but by the time I park, the clock reaches 9 p.m. The headache's no longer just pain, it begins to feel like static. A soft glow came from inside her cabin. I staggered to the door, my legs unsteady. It swung inward before my fist could connect, and there, standing in the threshold, I finally saw her. The flush in her cheeks is wrong. It's too red, like old meat. Her body is too thin beneath her house dress, bones pressing against skin that's lost its elasticity. When she smiles, her lips pull back too far, showing too many teeth. "Benjamin," her voice is the same warm rasp. "Are you all right?" I try to run. I try to get back to the truck, but she's there, hand on my shoulder, impossibly fast. "Shh, child, come inside. You're seeing things, aren't you? The walkers do that. They get in your head, they make you doubt what's real." She guides me towards the door with surprising strength. "But I can help. Come have tea, we'll talk." I don't want to go inside. But the headache is so bad I can barely stand. And her cabin is warm, and she's the only person who's acknowledged that any of this is happening. I followed her inside, the door closing behind me with a soft, final click. The cabin felt smaller than I remembered and darker, as if the walls had crept inward to swallow the light. I noticed the shadows in the corner didn't behave properly, stretching and pooling in defiance of the single oil lamp that burned on the counter. Without a word, Auntie guided me to her kitchen table, her hand on my arm as she directed me into a chair. She moved to the stove to put a kettle on, her motions possessing a fluid, unnerving grace that belonged to someone decades younger. "You're on night 3, she says. Not a question. The middle point, that's when it gets worse. Your mind's trying to bridge two states of being, warm and cold, living and She trails off, pours tea into mismatched mugs. I wrap my hands around the mug. The ceramic is cold, despite the steaming liquid inside. Why is this happening to me? My voice sounds distant. "Because you looked," she sits across from me. "And because you saved the girl, Nika." "Yes." Something flickers across Auntie's face, almost regret. Almost. "She wasn't supposed to come back, Benjamin. Some accounts were meant to close." "What does that mean?" She sips her tea. "Would you like to hear a story? An old one, about the ocean, sacrifice, price of living too long?" I nod because I don't know what else to do. Because the cabin feels like it's pressing down on me, because I can feel something in the corners waiting. Auntie's voice drops to a storyteller's cadence. There was once a woman who refused to marry. Her father tried everything, arranged matches with strong hunters, wealthy traders, even shamans, but she refused them all. She had no interest in men. The tea tastes like seawater. One winter, she fell in love with her dog. Beautiful animal, strong, loyal. They say she loved it more than any human. When her father discovered this, he was filled with shame. He took her out on his kayak far from shore, and he threw her into the ice water to drown. I want to put down the mug, but my hands won't move. She tried to climb back into the kayak, grabbed the gunwale, begged her father to pull her up. But he took his ulu, he cut off her fingers, one by one. Each finger that fell into the water became something new, became seals, whales, all the creatures of the deep, and the woman herself sank down to become Sedna, the mother of the sea, keeper of drowned things. Auntie's voice had changed, become layered like multiple people speaking in unison. But here's the part they don't tell children. Sedna didn't just become a goddess, she became hungry. Every finger she lost was a piece of warmth taken from the living world, and to keep existing, to keep her place in the deep, she needed to replace that warmth again and again forever. My vision's tunneling. The cabin walls seem to breathe. We all make choices, Benjamin. Some of us choose to drown. Some of us choose to cut the fingers. Some of us... She leaned forward, and her face is changing, cheeks hollowing, further skin pulling tight against skull. Some of us choose to feed. In the window behind her, I see them. Walkers, 3 of them, standing perfectly still, watching. I try to stand, but my legs are numb. I try to speak, but my tongue is thick. Auntie reaches across the table, touches my hand with her cold hands. I'm sorry, Benjamin, but you understand, don't you? A child's life buys more than adults. More years, more warmth, but you saved her. You broke the equation, so I need yours. She's holding a curved knife with a bone handle. I try to move, and my body is leaden, and a cold understanding dawns. I know what she's put in my drink. It won't hurt. The cold comes fast at this stage. You'll just stop, and I'll have 17 more winters, maybe less. Not as young as I used to be. She laughs. That sounds like wind through empty buildings, though I suppose 7 centuries is a good run. The walkers in the window are inside now, standing behind my chair. I can feel them. I can feel them radiating cold. Auntie raises the knife, and in that suspended moment, a fractured memory crashes over me. It comes in a flash. A woman is screaming, running desperately through deep snow with a mob at her heels. Their torches cutting through the darkness as voices shout, "Witch! A demon! Unclean!" She stumbles and falls, and someone catches her, holding her down while another brings that ulu to her face. The blade cuts from cheek to jaw, and she's screaming a name over and over. In a desperate, pleading mantra, Akna, Akna, Akna. I shout the name without thinking, a raw cry that tears from my throat. Akna! The effect is instant. Auntie recoils as if I've struck her, and the knife clatters to the floor. Light pours through the window, not moonlight, not aurora, something older. It illuminates Auntie in harsh relief, and I see what she truly is, the centuries of borrowed time written in the spaces between her cells, the hollow where her humanity used to be, the scar on her cheek that never healed. The walkers behind me scatter. They simply cease to exist like smoke in wind. Auntie, Akna, crouches away from the light, making sounds that aren't quite words. It's giving me a chance. I run. I burst out the door and into the suffocating snow, my truck keys already clutched in my hand as if they had materialized there. The engine roared to life on the first try, a miracle or some other form of interference. I don't know, and I don't care. It wasn't until I was a half-mile down the road, the tires crunching on the packed snow, that I dared to glance into the rearview mirror. Her cabin sat dark and silent and solitary against the vast white expanse. But in the single window I could see her, a stark silhouette standing perfectly still, watching me flee, waiting.
Hey, did you like that creepypasta story that you heard today? I bet you did, because you stuck around to hear the outro. So, if you want to find more creepypasta stories like this, check out the links in the description down below that lead you over to the Creepypasta Collection, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 1 and Volume 2 also have a bunch of stories from some of the best authors I've worked with in the past 15 years, which I think is pretty high praise, seeing as it's like, 4,000 stories? That's right, 4,000 stories. Subscribe, you'll see them. But yes, 2 books available, Amazon, link down below, check them out. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody on this list of Patreons. Some of these amazing folks are Diana Kraus, Acid System, Blake Rattler, Brandon Mendoza, Brenna Crow, Caltuna, Chicago Hitman, Corey Kenshin, Crusader Chocobo, Dakota Best, Daniel Polson, Dante Kincaid, Enchanted Buns, Estabine, Hades Nephew, Himbo Jerry, Our Minute Seconds Time, Ingegerd Solstrom, Jay Kearns, Jadis Pet, McMog, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Psychomel, Plant Piz, Red Shadow Cat, Remember the Sun, Salty Surprise, Samara Lynn, Seclude, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Sky Harbor, Smiley the Psychotic, Sully Man, Tully Sue, Team Leo 76, The Demented Voice in Your Head, The Chavez Brothers, The Ginger Bros, Tommy Walters, Viceroy Scorn, William Wellington, Your Bro Keegan, Zabub, and Shadow Gardens. A huge thank you to you guys, everybody who shows up in the description down below, and as always, folks, sweet dreams.
'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while the visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma, in her kerchief, and I in my cap, had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave the luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wind hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in furs from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump and a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him, in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying a finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, as he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
Hey there kids, it's me, Mr. Creepypasta, and we're currently entering fall, which means Halloween is right around the corner. I just want to say thank you guys for watching tonight's video, listening to tonight's episode of the podcast, and to start expecting more audios as we go closer and closer to the spookiest day of the year. Once October starts, you know what that means. I'll be having out a video every single day until Halloween itself, and I expect to see you there. I mean it. I expect to see you there for every video, for every podcast episode, and I expect to see you like, comment, and subscribe, and all that jazz bell, what do you do on podcasts? Follow on Spotify? Yeah, that, for the month of October, and especially so you don't miss the 13-day countdown. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody on this list of Patreons. Some of these amazing folks are Diana Kraus, Acid System, Blake Rattler, Brandon Mendoza, Britta Crow, Kaltuna, Chicago Hitman, Corey Kenshin, Crusader Chocobo, Dakota Best, Daniel Polson, Dante Kincaid, Enchanted Buns, Estabine, Hades Nephew, Himbo Jerry, Our Minute Seconds Time, Ingegerd Solstrom, Jay Kearns, Jadis Pet, McMog, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Psychomel, Plant Piz, Red Shadow Cat, Remember the Sun, Salty Surprise, Samara Lynn, Seclude, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Sky Harbor, Smiley the Psychotic, Sully Man, Tully Sue, Team Leo 76, The Demented Voice in Your Head, The Chavez Brothers, The Ginger Bros, Tommy Walters, Viceroy Scorn, William Wellington, Your Bro Keegan, Zabub, and Shadow Gardens. A huge thank you to you guys, everybody who shows up in the description down below, and as always, folks, sweet dreams.
I've been feeling something watching me for weeks. I couldn't have told you what it was, and if it hadn't made its presence known, I probably would have never had a clue. It was early spring, and any time I was out feeding chickens, tending to my goats, or milking cows, I'd sense the presence of something just behind me. It was never foolish enough to let me have a look at it, and that may have led me to believe that it was afraid of me. I'd turn around suddenly on my milking stool or with chicken feed ready to throw in my hand, expecting to see a cat, maybe some kind of stray dog. There was never anything there. It wasn't until about 3 weeks after I had first felt the eyes that I found the dead goat. Myrtle was one of my older goats, an animal I'd had since I moved out here after my husband died. She was as good a goat as you could have, pretty good temperament, not what most people would call a butter, and generally pretty amiable as far as goats went. I'd come out to do some milking and check on some kits that had just been born, and she was lying dead right there in the middle of the paddock. The other goats were giving her a wide berth, and it was as if they were also a little afraid to get too close to her. She had been ripped open from throat to groin, and whatever it was had taken a pretty big bite out of her. I didn't really know what to expect. I knew the area I had coyotes, and a lot of problems with feral dogs, but I never had anything like this happen. I called my neighbor, Mr. Ward, big old guy who's been here since just after World War II. He helped me sometimes, and he's been a good neighbor to me since he knows that I'm new at this. He shook his head, said exactly what I'd been thinking. "Yeah, looks like coyotes got her." Coyotes? I haven't seen any coyotes around this year. Well, it's still pretty early in the year. Hasn't been really what we would consider spring for more than a couple of weeks. Probably been lying up, not getting far from their den, since most of them have new pups to care for, and food's just starting to wake up for the season. My advice would be to put out repellent. You have any? I told him I had a little left from last year. He shook his head, said that it wouldn't do. He came back about an hour later with a bag of something that stank to high heaven. I asked him what was in it, and he puffed up a little with pride as he told me that it was an old family recipe made out of mothballs, sulfur, black powder, and all sorts of stuff. He said coyotes wouldn't want to get in their nostrils. Coyotes have a very sensitive nose. Most of them will get away from this, not want to come anywhere near your property. I don't think you'll have much of a problem after this. He told me to sprinkle it around outside the property line, and I thanked him as I took the bag and set to work. He wasn't kidding. The stuff was extremely smelly. I was glad once the sack was empty, I could return to my life as it usually occurred. I was sad for the loss of my goat, but I reminded myself that she had been old when I got her. She probably didn't have too many winters left in her. I reminded myself that it wasn't as if it was one of the young goats, ones I had just got done spending all that money on. A couple days later, it was like I was living in a sense of deja vu. I came out to the goat pen and found another dead goat, laying there in the middle of the paddock, its throat ripped out, split open from throat to groin. I wonder if Mr. Ward's family recipe was really as potent as it smelled. When I called him to make inquiries, he laughed and said that sometimes that would happen. He said it was nothing to get concerned about, just make sure that I was bringing my goats in at night so that the coyotes would leave them alone. I hated to do it. The goats seemed to enjoy sleeping outside at night, but I figured they would enjoy being alive more. I started bringing my goats in, and for a little while it got better. A few days afterward, I noticed some damage to the side of the building. I knew coyotes liked to dig, but this didn't look like damage from someone digging. It looked like something had tried to make its way through the side of the goat barn, and it had made some pretty good progress. I'd have to replace the wood on the side of the barn if I wanted my goats to stay in, and I went to the hardware store and reinforced it with some sheet metal, and hopefully that would be the end of it. The sense of being watched had never quite gone away, but now it only seemed to get worse. I could catch sight of things out of my peripherals, some kind of strange animal shape that was never far away. I started getting worried that it might be a wolf or some kind of animal with a strange, aggressive disease. You never know when something's going to come up with the mange or with rabies or something, and it's best to be prepared if it should happen. If it were something with rabies, then it might be best to put it down before it bites somebody. Mostly I was worried about it biting me, since my closest neighbor was Mr. Ward. He was over 2 miles to the east. I really didn't want to have to get all those rabies shots that I knew a bite would lead to. There was never any guarantee that you wouldn't pick it up at some point after work. I started carrying my gun with me, the old shotgun that my husband had carried for years, and it gave me a certain amount of comfort to have it close by. I guess that was about the time the dreams started too, though I don't usually put a lot of stock in dreams. In my dreams, I was always going about my farm chores. Something followed me across my waking hours. It was unlike any animal I'd ever heard of. It had legs that were longer than any animal's should be. Walked around on them most comically as it stopped me across my farm. I never looked behind me, but just the sights from the edges of my periphery were enough to make me think I didn't really want to see what it was. It looked like a big dog, but that was just what I could tell from little glances. I started looking for this long whatever it was anytime I was out doing farm stuff. And luckily I never really caught a sight of it, but as the dreams persisted, I almost came to expect that one day I would. I started to feel jumpy. My paranoia really racketing up the longer this went on, and it was hard to maintain my sanity day in and day out. I had had a problem with drinking right after my husband died, and it had taken me a couple of years to finally realize it and get it back under control. After the dreams started, I picked up a bottle for the first time in nearly a decade. And it should have felt like a step backwards, but honestly, it felt just right. Mr. Ward started stopping by more often. I could tell he was a little worried about me, probably thought I was losing it out there on my own. He'd never been one to hover or try to tell me my business, as so many people in the community did. I didn't really mind the extra attention. He was a nice enough fella. He also never tried to get in my pants like many of the people in town. Most of them just saw me as a woman on her own, and that made them think that I needed protection of some kind or another. "You sleeping all right?" he asked me one afternoon after inviting me over for dinner.
Your eyes look like you haven't had a good night's sleep since before Trump got in office.
I laughed and told him that I'd been having some weird dreams lately, but it's probably nothing. He sipped at his coffee, giving me a look that made me think that he wasn't so sure.
My grandma told me a story when I was a kid about a creature. One that gave people bad dreams. Have I ever told it to you?
I shook my head. Mr. Ward usually didn't indulge in stories. As he got rolling with it, I realized this was probably more of a folktale than some sort of historical event.
And Grandma always used to say that it was a creature that attached itself to people and swallowed their soul while they slept. It was called Laramie, or something like that. And it was supposed to be pretty nasty. It took the form of a big dog, some kind of canine, maybe even a coyote. It would continue to attack them in their sleep until there was nothing left. It would stalk them, and eventually it'd either get tired of them or it would drain them dry.
I told him it sounded like his grandmother had the same taste in kids' stories that mine did, but he didn't laugh. He looked deathly serious about this, and I wondered if this was another one of his anecdotes or if this was something a little more personal to him.
Well, the Laramie could only be run off by ignoring it completely. You can't acknowledge that it exists because it feeds on your fear and your trepidation. You have to completely turn your back on it or else it'll find you and it'll take what it wants.
I asked him if his family's coyote repellent worked on this thing too. He still didn't laugh.
I take this seriously, girl. I had a great aunt that my grandmother claimed was drained dry by the Laramie. She started having the bad dreams and she began getting very paranoid. And all of a sudden, she just died one night. Went to bed as fitful as usual. She simply never woke up.
Thanked him. But I really didn't take what he was saying seriously. It's just bad dreams. Nobody really believes that some spiritual boogeyman is trying to get you through your dreams, do they? This isn't a horror movie, and I was extremely skeptical about anything that sounded that preposterous. That night, the dreams changed slightly. I was still being stalked by whatever it was. I firmly put the name Laramie out of my head, but it had begun whispering something to me. I wasn't quite sure what it was. It never got close enough for me to really tell, but no matter what I was doing in my dreams, it got closer and closer until I felt as if it were right behind me. I'd be washing the dishes or feeding the chickens or doing something out on my farm, and I could feel its hot breath on the back of my neck as I went about my day. I could still catch a little glimpse of it in my peripheral vision, but it still just looked like a big dog with long legs. Now that it was closer, I could tell it was probably a coyote, but it still had those huge noodle legs that it walked around on like some kind of deranged children's drawing. It would whisper just low enough for me to not make it out, and as my anxiety racketed up, I tried my best to put it out of my mind. Suddenly, Mr. Ward's story didn't seem so far-fetched, and I obediently set my face forward as I washed dishes and fed chickens and tried to survive this monstrous dream. It went on like that for 3 or 4 nights, the Laramie now in my mind at all times, whether I wanted to think of it or not. It would come to me and whisper in my dreams, and I would try my best not to acknowledge it. I'd turn my face away, I'd keep it forward, not looking left or right, so as not to let it know that I had ever seen it. Each dream seemed to last 1,000 days, and I really believed that I would go crazy before it ended. And then, on the last night that I saw the creature, it changed yet again. It was coming around to the side of me and not fully letting me see it, but letting me know it was there. It wasn't whispering anymore either. It was saying my name out loud, letting me hear it. It had never done this before. It had always whispered, and for it to be all but shouting my name at me made me even more nervous. I didn't know what to do. I just kept ignoring it and kept acting like it didn't exist. As the night went on, it seemed to get more and more agitated, and instead of saying it, it started yelling my name in this deep, guttural voice. It sounded like a dog trying to bark someone's name, and it sent every hair on my body standing on end. I dropped a plate while I was washing dishes and had to slowly bend down to pick up the pieces while the creature capered around me, just out of sight. I was shaking near the end, certain that I was about to go insane, and when it shouted my name, it took everything I had not to jump or flinch or show it any sign that I had heard it at all. I could feel my lips trembling, and my face getting ready to break into a scream, and then, as suddenly as it began, the dream ended. I was sitting on my bed, sweat standing out on my body, but it was the last night I ever saw the creature. I told Mr. Ward about it, and he said that I had gotten very lucky. He said most people don't survive their encounter with the Laramie, and that I should be very careful of it in the future. It hasn't been back since, but sometimes I feel myself being watched in my dreams, and I wonder if it's waiting just on the edge of my vision, trying to see if I'll notice it once again.
Hey there kids, it's me, Mr. Creepypasta, and before we say goodnight, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching tonight's video, or for listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. As always, I want to give a very big thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon, patreon.com/MrCreepypasta. That is the main place you guys are able to support me if you guys want to be able to support me, which you absolutely don't have to do, but hey, thank you for, doing that, if that's something that you do. And if it's not something that you do, hey, please help me. In all seriousness, I really appreciate it if you guys could be able to help me out. If you guys are able to give anything, even $1 a month. And especially if you guys like, you can become one of these wonderful people whose names I mispronounce. People such as Diana Kraus, Acid System, Benjamin 2003, Blake Rattler, Bottle Coolant, Brandon Mendoza, Caltuna, Corey X Kenshin, Dakota Best, Daniel Polson, Dante Kincaid, Enchanted Buns, Eric Anthony Caruso, Estebean, 15 Squirrels in a Trench Coat, Galaxy Gremlin, Hayes Nephew, Himbo Jerry, Our Minute Second Time, Jay Kearns, Jedis Pet, Lou Cipher, Nick MC, Plant Piss, Red Shadow Cat, Remember the Sun, Salty Surprise, Samara Lynn, Scary Stories Fuel Me 32, Seclude, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Sky Harbor, Smiley the Psychotic, Sully Man, Polly Sue, Team Leo 76, The Chavez Brothers, The Ginger Bros, Tommy Walters, Viceroy Scorn, William Wellington, X Reaper 69, XX Lucky Cat XX, Zibulb, Shadow Gardens, Peaceful Buddha. All these really great guys, as well as all the folks you see in the description down below, or everybody that you see scrolling across the screen. Hey, I want to say thank you so much for supporting me. Thank you all so much for being here. And as always, sweet dreams.